Welcome back to another episode of Hey, Did You See This One? We're finishing off our questionable choice of theme this month, which was June Henson, which was a we have not afforded pizzas yet, but soon. We are doing June Henson, which were movies that were either directed by, written by, or worked on by the Jim Henson Company in terms of their puppet shop or their monster warehouse, creature shop. And this week we are finishing that month with the movie Labyrinth, a movie that came out on the year of our Lord 1987. No, that was just the year that I was born.
Also the year I was born.
Oh, we're the same age? Why is your
birthday?
facial hair so much thicker than mine?
Because of the Greeks. It's because of the Greeks.
It's because of the Greeks. Okay. I'm born in May. You know that. We did my whole month in May, remember?
Oh, yeah. So wait, what? So you're 36 right now?
No.
You said you're 86, right?
87.
Oh, I thought you said 86. This movie came out in 86, didn't it?
Yes.
87. Oh, 86?
86.
Oh my God.
Can't cancel the show. We can't get our facts together.
We're not the same age.
No, you're right. I'm looking at it right now. 86.
It's 85, okay. 86, 87.
I apologize. I was incorrect about the release date of this year, but not incorrect
but
about
not
the
your
year
birthday.
of my birth. Yeah. So I guess we'll hop right in. Quick synopsis. The movie is about a young girl who wishes her little brother was taken away by goblins, specifically a goblin king. And
can I?
What?
You forgot we're 53 episodes into this show.
Are you gonna? I know where you have to do our first introductions. I just want to give a little snippet of the story.
Sorry.
Yeah. Instead of going through like 45 minutes, it's just about a girl who wishes her little brother would be kidnapped by goblins, and she is transported to a magical labyrinth world where she has to solve the labyrinth in order to save him. And that is basically the story of this movie.
And David Bowie shows up and is a pervert the whole time.
You know what?
He's actually not as pervy as I thought.
No, me either, except for one part, but we'll get to it.
It's mostly like we're all wondering, how did they let this man walk onto set with his whole penis out? And
his giant package was in front of many young people.
And it's so weird because it changes size apparently during the movie, according to my viewing. I was like, it looks bigger now than it did before.
Sometimes
I think it depends on who was in the scene
and how many drugs he'd done that day.
And also I think how close up. There was one scene where there was like his whole dick was in the shot. And
it's when he's telling Hoggle that he's going to stick him in the bog of eternal stench, and it's just like his crotch is right there. It looks way more subdued.
Yeah, but like later at the very end when he's like full on like trying to seduce a 14-year-old girl, it
looks like he's got a tennis ball in there. Anyway, let's go on to the first times that we ever saw these movies. I think I'll just start this time. The first time I saw this movie was when I was a very young boy being babysat by my friend Durak.
Holy
Matt
shit.
Durak's sister.
Whoa! Did they wish for you to be captured by a Goblin King?
Big Rugged with the big donations. No, they loved me. They were excited every time I came over. Thank you so much, Big Rugged. That is extremely helpful to us. We love you so much,
Big Rugged. That's awesome,
cool dude.
Thank you.
We will have pizza coming out of our ears soon.
And I like just a side note, the people that the subs went to are people that come and watch all the time. So I'm glad that they went to like Dex Durden, Art by the Sea, Bufflin, Rhett Slandrick, Stiverton, the Bradford guy.
Don't forget Grandpa Smoke.
These are people that I've seen come in and watch us. So I'm glad they went to people that actually come hang. So, and thank you so much, Big Rugged.
I've got to get those pizzas.
we're gonna eat pizza this weekend.
Yeah,
I'm waiting.
Well, we should have a pizza party stream where we all get our pizza and eat it together.
It's true. It's true.
But yeah, this movie I saw when I was a young kid because our friend Matt, my friend Matt, who you know him, Jason, you've met him many times. His sister was older than us, so she often babysat us when we were younger, and she would put on movies that she liked. Obviously, like I think we had this conversation about what's that Bette Midler movie with the witches?
Hocus Pocus.
No. Oh yes, okay. I thought you were thinking Witches of Eastwick, but Brett Miller. I'm like
Brett
so
Midler.
blown away by this like generosity that I can't even words right now.
Yeah, he said he needs to see the pizzas, so we got to do it on stream.
We have to have a
If you
pizza
guys want to make
mukbang for
Jason
this
fumble
man.
his words,
Yeah. Give me money.
Give me more money so I can get pizza. But yeah, I saw this when I was a young kid being babysat, and there's the sort of coincidental fact that like she was babysitting us. It's about babysitting in the beginning, and you're kind of getting spooked as a kid. But unlike The Dark Crystal, this movie isn't full of like horrifying, vile, monstrous, terrifying things. So it's got a lot of levity in it, and it's like the appropriate level of darkness that you can handle as a kid. So I remember enjoying it, but I didn't watch it again for a very long time until I was probably in my early 20s or so. And even watching it again at that age, I was like, well, you know what? This movie's still got some guts, and I like it. And I was really into David Bowie at that time, so I was like, this is great. I love that he's the bad guy in this movie. And I it's not like this is a movie I go back to often, but every time I watch it, I have a fairly good time with it, even though it's kind of a little hollow and a little bit childish at times. It's not really boring. Like, at least there's stuff that is attempting humor and sometimes succeeding, sometimes not so much, and everything just looks visually interesting. Whereas in The Dark Crystal, a lot of stuff becomes samey after a while. It's like, okay, the vistas all look the same, whereas this, it's like, now we got a new thing that you get to stick your eyeballs towards, like David Bowie's junk. And now I'll pass it over to Jason.
David Bowie's tennis ball dog. That sounds more like I'm doing a lounge act.
Yeah.
But my first time with this movie was probably when I was 5 or 6. My dad liked to watch psychedelic movies with me, and I remember
were you both on psychedelics?
Well, he definitely was. But I remember watching it when I was really little. I don't really remember anything about that. I just remember like seeing the VHS, like holding a VHS. I had this incredible connection to holding and having stacks of VHSs, like rentals, when I was a little kid. And it still gives me that like nostalgia pang when I think about that sound of cracking open a VHS.
The plastic, yeah.
And it's like, I rented this movie I picked out, and now I get to watch. Now it's like you just throw on Netflix and you're like, I don't want to watch any of this. I'm just gonna
I'm gonna
go
spend
through the
45 minutes to 2 hours trying to choose something, and then be like, let's just rewatch The Office.
Exactly. And then watch 16 episodes of The Office in a row. Be like, I don't feel like watching a whole movie. That's too long. I'm gonna watch 2 full seasons of The Office instead. But my coming of age story with this movie more so is me and my group of friends when we were like 17 were fascinated with how overtly sexual David Bowie was in this film. And we couldn't...
Fascinated. More like horny.
Yeah, I guess so, maybe. But we couldn't stop watching it all, stoned up as teenagers. And it's one of those kind of like weird psychedelic films you watch with your friends when you're a teenager. And that was when I got most of the movie into my brain and remember most of it. But this time watching it, like, I think I got a lot more out of it than I ever have. Probably because I'm an adult and I watch a lot of movies these days and I'm looking for different things. But there was some good storytelling, especially where The Dark Crystal was so like good versus evil. This one, you actually see the villain sort of have this arc where he has a bit of a crisis of faith, and they couldn't fully lean into him being in love with this girl because like she's underage, and that's not great storytelling. It's just gross. But he was like, I wanted this baby, and then he was like, I'm falling for this girl. But then it gets a little creepy and weird, and I think it could have been told a little bit better, maybe if she was like, she's at 18 years old at least. Yeah, she's
well, I mean, Jennifer Conroy was 14 when this movie was filmed. She looks a little bit older. I was surprised to learn that, but like, I think that was also by design.
I also think that's Americans. For some reason, it just seems like Americans look older than us.
It could be. I don't
Maybe.
know. I
It's also a byproduct of the fact that she is very much like her hair and the way she's
Yeah.
dressed is not necessarily like childish to what you would imagine a
And when
child
you're
would be
like
wearing.
back then, when people were kind of groomed for
Oh my god,
television
they're coming
and
for
movies.
us. We just have to stop talking about this. Somebody's talking about 14-year-old Jennifer Connelly in the Labyrinth right now. Send out the paddy wig.
Yeah, but I think it was more so that people that are raised as in movies and film, they like age a bit faster, so they wear it on their face.
Exposed to
like look at Drew Barrymore. She was in E.T. and by the time she was a teenager, she looked like she was 20, and then you age down through your 20s because you have access to like plastic surgery and all the best like people. The best people. This is a weird conversation. I kind of want to move on.
It's making me uncomfortable.
Segue.
I'm sorry. I'm also talking about my first interactions with this movie, and basically this time watching it, I really enjoyed it. I didn't give it like the highest rating. We'll get to the rating at the end, but Labyrinth is a great kids movie, and doesn't have as much terrifying imagery as Dark Crystal, and I remember it having way more, and I remember this movie being way grosser and weird.
They also like they show you some gross imagery and then they subvert it a little bit with something funny right afterwards. Like every time you see something that's truly scary, right afterwards something kind of funny happens where you're like, oh,
yeah, like
cute.
she falls down a horrible tunnel of hands and then falls into is that when she falls into the bog of stench? And the things that are shooting out the gas are like
they look like anuses. Yeah.
Anyway,
but then you hear a bunch of fart noises and you're like, haha, fart.
Farts.
Fart is funny.
But yeah, sorry, Kaylin, I just started talking about the movie before you got to do your bit.
No, not at all. I don't got a bit. This is my first time. This is my
Really?
first time watching.
I find this very hard to believe that you don't have a bit. Let's go.
I think he's doing a bit.
I think not having a bit is the bit.
Oh God.
This is my first time, and so yes to everything you guys said. Excuse me. A step up from Dark Crystal as far as, so Dark Crystal was also something I watched for the first time the other week, and so watching these movies for the first time now versus when they were released or at a younger age, even regardless of release, definitely kind of sets a different tone. But this one definitely was a step up in regards to there being more meat to the bones, more depth to the story. The production, the creatures, like, still on point. The one thing I started getting more drawn to it during the second half, but the one thing that was like kind of like driving me crazy during the first like half hour or whatever was Sarah's like just her delivery of her lines. Like it almost felt like Shakespearean or something.
Well, yeah, there's a reason for that, which is because she's super into theater, and like the opening bit of the movie is that she's like practicing a play in the park by herself. Like she's like a weird theater nerd, right?
Okay.
And she's like super over dramatic. Like everything she's doing is like to the next level of dramaticism. And then she's like, when she's freaking out in the maze, like really early on, she's like doing stuff that is you would consider extra these days.
Yeah.
And
she's like
I think
she's like a horse girl, but for theater.
Are you talking about that movie with what's her face from Community?
Yeah, but that's different. That movie's fucked.
I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with Horse Girl. Can you explain this to me?
Horse girls are girls
Steve,
that are
go
super.
watch Horse Girl.
Well, but horse girls are kind of like those girls that like go riding and love horses so much that their whole personality is.
Oh,
horses.
Okay. So like somebody who identifies very like their identity is something that they're into. So like there are people like that, like Star Wars people who are like, my only thing is Star Wars, or my only thing is Final Fantasy.
Dragon Ball.
I'm just kidding, Jason. Your only thing is not Final Fantasy. You're also wrestling.
Hey, that's two things though. A lot of people don't have two things.
That's true.
Also like to watch television and movies, and also
I'm sorry. That was an unfair dig. I apologize.
Big Rugged likes your background, Kaylin.
You're welcome.
Yeah,
it's
a very awesome poster of the movie. I was tempted to pick that one myself, but I was like, I gotta go for what the movie's about, a big old labyrinth.
Yeah, I like yours, actually. I like yours a lot.
I
feel like I'm rating someone's dick on mine.
Yeah, David Bowie's. His dick is all over this movie. Did you watch it? You can't go anywhere
Did you find the
accidentally
hidden
seeing
dick
his
throughout
balls.
the movie?
What?
That was a joke. Did you find the hidden faces throughout the movie?
Well, there's one in my thing right here.
Yeah. I thought
some of them are very obvious, but a lot of them are kind of more.
I interpreted that face as the Hall of Faces. That's like, go back. You don't want to go this way, but I didn't know there was like a trope.
Oh yeah, this is David Bowie's face. There's a whole bunch of Bowie faces in the movie hidden.
I think there's 7.
I didn't find them all. I wasn't really looking. I was more trying to enjoy the movie and not be like, there's got to be one in this scene.
Like the aliens.
You got to do 2
Park.
viewings at the very least. 2 viewings.
Yeah, Kaylin watches the movie 16 times throughout the week, and then
it just keep getting more and more every episode.
So, Kaylin, your first viewing of this movie was recently. Then
it was today.
It was today. Well, nothing wrong with that, as long as you got some interesting things to say about it. So let's start hopping, if you will, through the labyrinth of the labyrinth and see where we can go from here. Do we want to just start talking about the plot and kind of talk as we go for this one?
How about the plot over here?
Yeah. So as I was saying, what's her name?
Sarah.
Sarah, that's right. Sarah is a huge nerd who loves theater. And so much so that she goes to the park in full theater costume with her jeans underneath.
Are you talking about the pirate shirt with the vest?
She's wearing a full dress. She's wearing like a full-on like Romeo and Juliet style dress in the park. The beginning of the movie. You said you watched this twice? Come on.
Okay.
And she's like, she sees the barn owl and she starts to basically spout the lines of the play to the barn owl. And then the clock tower goes off and she realizes that she's late. So she has to run home because she has some prior engagement that we're unaware of to this point. But once she gets home, you realize that her parents have asked her to babysit. And it doesn't seem like she has much of a life, but she has sort of a typical argument with her mom or stepmom. I'm not sure. I'm assuming stepmom because
stepmom, yeah.
She says she treats me like a horrible stepmom from a fairy tale or whatever. And
yeah, her mom is not in the picture at this time.
Right. Yeah. There's literally a picture of somebody who sort of looks like her later, which I think maybe just might be her real mom in real life.
I think it's yeah.
Oh yes. I was like, how did they get a picture of Jennifer Connelly from the future?
This is some serious Photoshop.
The other nice touch from those kind of bits are the guy, the Goblin King action figure that she has on her.
Yeah, the whole room actually. Like if you're watching carefully, everything in the room gets referenced. Not everything, but a lot of the stuff in the room gets referenced in some way. She's got the Escher poster. She's got a stuffed animal that looks like Ludo. She's got a whole bunch of stuff throughout the room, but
that's where your
it's kind of cool.
Come from.
It is, and it's also like, you know, that is in a sense very, very childish, but also interesting, right? Like it would be cool to go into a bedroom full of random stuff that doesn't really match together in terms of theme, or, you know, just a collection of random stuff and try to create a story around it, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's
almost why like my theory corner is going to be pretty obvious today.
Well, it's like opening a toy box and then trying to get, like, you know, your Star Wars action figures to fight your Marvel action figures, and just try to like figure out a logical story to have it make sense. And within this, it's like, you know, it's like the Lego movie, really, right? Like the Lego movie is just like everything, a toy box. Which that is one aspect of the movie that I really enjoy, is you see back into her room later in the movie, and then you really start to piece together that stuff, because it does like sort of a slow pan through her room, and you start to notice everything, being like, oh, these are all things from her room. This is cool. So she is distraught that she has to babysit without her mom asking her again.
She hates it.
She hates it so much. and
it's
she
not
hates
fair.
It's not fair, and she hates her brother.
She hates that baby so fucking much.
Yeah.
That she
also,
wishes a goblin king, a full village of a full world of goblins would come and steal the baby away. And then as soon as it happens, as soon as she manifests that into the universe, she's like, oh shit, what have I done? I gotta get that baby back.
Yeah.
She's
got to get her baby back. Yeah, there we go. I was wondering if that would happen. But I have to say, I've mentioned a couple times on this podcast that I used to be a camp counselor for many years when I was younger, and this kid, the baby, looks so much like a kid that came to that summer camp year after year, and I hated this kid so much, and he cried all the time.
Age limit?
What?
How old?
He wasn't a literal baby. I'm saying that he looked like him. Like, imagine this baby grew up to be the age of 6.
Oh.
Did you notice?
How much does your baby face look like your real face?
Well, I mean,
once you go through puberty, yeah, your nose and your bone structure changes, but like until that point, you still have a pretty babyish face.
Okay.
Kaylin, like, imagine walking around and seeing 8-year-olds who just look like full-grown men.
Yo,
that'd be terrifying.
I'm pretty sure I've seen one or two online.
Would you like a suit shine? So anyway, the kid, I had no sympathy for this child because of this kid that went to this summer camp throughout the whole movie, because he's crying the whole time in the movie, and this kid used to cry for years at this summer camp. So I was just like, I hate this kid's face so much. I would punt this baby to the Goblin King myself.
I'd like to see an interview with the actor that played that baby, though, because it
Todd.
seemed terrifying. See, the baby's name was Todd, but it seems
this kid was traumatized for years after this.
Yeah, the baby is legitimately crying with these crazy Muppets all around it a lot in this movie. At times I was like, why is that baby face so wet with tears? Do they just have this kid? Must be twins, I assume. Maybe not. Maybe they just have them on.
Maybe, but like they don't really use the baby.
According to the credits, it was just one.
Yeah, okay. So they had to get this baby crying.
It's not like the baby's in the whole movie, right? Like the baby is
That's true.
very sort of like sparingly, and then there are even moments where it's clearly like a robot or a doll.
Yeah, or a doll. Or
like when he's throwing the baby up in the air,
like David Bowie just tucking his fucking doll around.
And there's one shot where he throws it up and the goblin catches it, but when it comes down, it clearly just hits the floor.
Hits the ground, yeah. They cut like that just to have the goblin be like, oh, I totally caught that. Oh, man. So she's very upset. She realizes one of her teddy bears is missing, Lancelot. I assume
I thought she said Lamb-salot, and I thought it was a stuffed lamb teddy, like teddy lamb.
Pretty sure she says Lancelot and it's just a bear.
Yeah, but imagine if it was Lamb-salot.
Could you imagine if this script was better? That would be creative and fun, but it also only kind of works if she has a pun for all of her other. I assume all those bears are named after the Knights of the Round Table, right? Like she has like a King Arthur and a whatever the rest of their names were. I don't know. Those are the only two that I care about. So she realizes that someone's been in her room. This is the one point that I'm like, did the mom take it and give it to him, or did the baby steal it somehow?
I think it's implied that because she's like, you're so spoiled and you're so entitled. I was like, how can a baby be entitled? But anyway.
And then she puts this weird Where's Waldo hat on, which I'm like, is that part of that kid's outfit? Like she just stole it from
I think it's the baby's hat. Yeah.
Well, she stretches the hell out of that hat. But she picks up the baby and she starts trying to curse the baby, basically. And it's cutting back and forth, which I think is very effective and cool. Is it's like cutting to these goblins that look like they're all sleeping in sort of like a bed, and their eyes are slowly opening, like it's almost like a wall of goblins, and their eyes start to glow red, and it's like this effect where it's clearly like there are lights inside of the puppet and it's glowing through, which I think for me, I was like, this is dope. Like I think this looks really cool. As I should have made that my background. Fuck, I didn't even think about it. But the goblins are essentially begging her to say the correct words, and she's not saying the correct words, and she just keeps sort of like making it too fancy and theatrical, just like you're saying. Like she's trying to make it seem like it's a play, but all they're being like, is it so hard to be like, I wish the goblins would come take this baby now?
Funny.
And she's like, I curse you to the heavens and the hells, and they're just like, oh god.
There's a lot of that recurring theme in this of just say what you want and you'll get it. Kind of like, you know, like later when Dimitri, it's the fucking
Demetrius or something.
Demetrius is just like, oh, nobody's never just asked me to pass before.
Like, oh, you cannot pass this bridge without my permission. Yeah, and then she's just like, well, can we have your permission? He's like,
okay,
I suppose so. Yeah.
And I'll join your party with my dog that's sometimes a puppet and sometimes a real dog.
That
I noticed
that little fox guy is definitely my favorite character.
He reminds me of he's like a prototype for Rizzo almost, in my opinion.
Right. Big Rugged, thank you so much again. We will have a great stream. We appreciate you so much. And
yeah, thank you, Big Rugged.
Any day of the week, my friend.
Yeah, come on by. We'll come see you. I'll come camp your stream when you do a subathon or when I'm working and I just need something on the background. And you're a homie. You're a real homie.
Let's do something special for him. Let's
Okay.
Let's involve him in the next pizza stream, and then he'll be here with us. Yeah.
Hope those pizzas.
Send him a slice.
Soon.
Can we send him a slice?
Yeah, give me your PO box, and I'll send you a dirty old slice of pizza.
No, or what about a pizza pocket? Send him a pizza pocket. Then that way he can make it when he wants.
Not better. They have to stay frozen, and yeah.
What about a pizza pot?
That's the same thing.
Same thing.
No, one of them's half moon, and the other one's
fucking God, Kate.
I think you know the difference, and you're just fucking with us now.
You are right. They are different things. One's more of like a folded over pizza, and one's more of like a contained pocket.
One's like a pizza ball sold by Pizza Papa.
Played by Bruce Campbell. Time to deliver a pizza ball.
So, do we have anything else to add about this scene? Anything that anybody wants to discuss within this scene of her cursing the baby?
I wrote, she said it, baby stops crying, goblins take babe. Because I type just like this when I'm taking notes.
Yeah. How is babe formed?
Oh, and this is where I wrote, is she gonna this is good. Is she gonna talk like an asshole for this whole movie? Babies cry. Okay.
Babies do cry, but babies crying is very annoying.
Big Rugged.
Not if you make them happy.
No, babies literally cry because they have no other way of communicating. So they'll cry if they are tired. They'll cry if they shit themselves. They'll cry if they're hungry. They'll cry if they want you to give them a toy. They always will cry.
There are psychologists who have actually like figured out what different cries could possibly mean, kind of like that Simpsons episode. I don't think it says
I am hungry. It's like Danny DeVito.
I am hungry.
Yeah.
Pick me up. But they have a couple of baseline based on a bunch of, psychology. They have a few baseline cries that they've been able to figure out that this specifically means I'm hungry. This specifically means, I need stimulation.
I went poo-poo.
A stimulation. I pooped. There's
I will
say
in my pants. That this baby is crying almost every time that Jennifer Connelly is holding the baby, but anytime David Bowie is holding the baby is not crying.
No, the baby's stoked.
He has like some secret like fangirl moments. Like, baby being like, it's David Bowie.
Baby, why don't you stop singing? And
you know what I want to do one day? I want to put an actual banana in the pocket of my pants.
Okay, go on.
And then I'll say, yes, that is a banana in my pants.
Cool. But you're just walking around saying that when no one's actually asking you.
Exactly.
You're going to steal a joke from It's Pat movie?
Whoa, is that a thing?
Yeah, they're like...
It's in everything. It's like is that a gun in your pocket? Or is that
But Rob Schneider is like, is that a banana? Because they're all trying to figure out if Pat's a man or a woman through the whole thing. And not Rob Schneider. Who's the...
Chris Kattan?
No, the guy from the 80s who had a sex tape and then also was on Parks and Rec.
Oh, Rob Lowe.
Yeah, Rob Lowe. He's in it. He's like the love interest who's like loves Pat, but still doesn't know
But he's
because
like,
it's very
yeah, he's like the-
homophobic. It was a different time, right? But anyway, there's where he's like, "Is that a banana in your pocket, or you just have to see me?" And Pat's like, "Ooh," pulls out a banana, and everybody went mild.
I never saw Pat, and I feel like at this point in the climate of today's day and age, I feel like Pat is probably a very problematic movie.
It's
it's probably very
definitely
problematic.
it's almost definitely the most problematic SNL movie, and that's saying a lot. Swing,
Let's move on.
Conehead. That's they're saying, right? Hey, Stiverton's in the chat. They'll cry if they're a little bitch, and then you show a
Referring
picture of
to
a baby
babies.
crying.
I told you, not as long as you keep them happy, they're fine.
Just keep their pants
I mean,
unshitted.
true. If you solve the mystery as to why the baby is crying, then yeah, you'll figure it out. But sometimes babies just cry. And I assume this baby
instead of
probably
just
cried for
changing the
years
baby's
afterwards.
diaper, Sarah instead decides to wish that the whole Goblin universe would come to her universe and steal away the baby.
And guess
What
what?
about-
It works.
What about when the parent? I think she was more afraid of what the parents would say because she was left at home alone with the baby. And then it turns into a crime. Then it turns into a mystery. Crime slash mystery.
I think that at first she is more concerned about the fact, oh fuck, I just cursed this child to a goblin dimension. But then she, throughout the movie, does realize like, I do care for this baby. He's my brother. I should not have done this. Maybe one day we can look back on this whole thing and laugh.
Theory corner. This
Oh.
all of this happens just right there. Like right. I know it was pretty obvious that I was going to say this all
What, in
happened
her
in her
room?
imagination, but this all happened like right in that moment. Like you know how you can just you're walking down the street. I was thinking about this when I went out for my walk. I was walking down the street. I had like a flash of a thing in my head, kind of like a dream, where it's like you experience a whole dream in like a second.
Yeah,
technically. And I thought of a scenario, like I thought of a thing in my mind that only took me a couple seconds to think of, but it went by very fast, right? I think that this is all one just like thought that she had, and then when she snaps out of it, when she's like in that trash heap part, she like comes out of it for a second, and then she like breaks out of it, but because she's like, I'm still going through my imagination journey.
using your imagination.
The good thing about these types of movies like Alice in Wonderland and Wizard of Oz and they are basically just a daydream, right? Like you are imagining something, you get knocked on the head, you go to sleep.
Alice in Wonderland is an accidental drug overdose, and and Wizard of Oz is
Not
a coma.
Maybe the author, but not the actual
Okay,
story.
but I mean, you could argue. You can make the
opinion.
same claim about any movie where somebody is going to a fantasy world and they have to, out of our world.
Except The Matrix. The Matrix actually happens to him. It's very clear.
All right,
it's very
great
clear
theory
that...
corner. This whole movie took place in 2 seconds.
Yeah. And sometimes Stiverton just cries. So
well,
I
sometimes
also
you
dropped
gotta
the
get
ball.
out those emotions.
Jason, did you hear when the title was said? Because I didn't make a note of when the title.
I did it because as soon as our boy Thundercock comes on the screen, I was like, he's going to say you have to go into the labyrinth, and it happened at 14 minutes and 30 seconds.
Thank you.
I was ready.
I made this place for you, and
it's the sexual awakening kingdom.
You have exactly 13 hours to solve my labyrinth.
Isn't that like a devil thing or something, like the 13th hour, like or something like isn't that like a superstitious thing, like the between midnight and 1 o'clock is like the devil's hour or something like that?
The witching hour.
The witching hour is at 3:33 a.m. That's the witching
Damn, I fucked up.
It could be the devil times. That's the new canon. If you want to drink a mega pint, you have to drink it between 12 and 1 a.m. A mega pint.
With your Bugatti strap-on on.
Remember
Everybody
Bugatti?
strap on your strap-ons on.
Bugatti? Was it?
Bugatti.
Bugatti.
They don't make 13th
this is
floor.
This is when the Goblin King himself arrives, when she goes back into the room and realizes that her brother is gone, and we get a really creepy moment where you see little shadows moving and puppets moving, and you're like, oh,
really
there
like
is something unsettling about the noises they're using, because they sound babyish, but it's clearly like a grown man or woman like, and it's scary. Like, it is scary. And the way it's lit, like it's lit in a way that there are deep shadows within the room, but you can see every corner of the room. So every time she's not looking in the right direction, you'll see something move in the background very clearly. And there's no maybes, did I see a thing? It's like you're always certain you saw something, which is again pretty effective. And you know, like the puppetry in this movie is fucking amazing, man. Like throughout, you're constantly being impressed. I think the one part that kind of wavers a little bit is when the fluorescent puppets show up and they start ripping their hands off and shit, and it's only like because of the optics,
the green screen.
Yeah, the green screen in that part is horrible, but the idea I spawned a lot of.
Well, I also watched a couple of years ago now. I watched that Elmo documentary where the guy who puppets Elmo goes through his entire career, and this is a major turning point in his career is this movie, and he's one of the main puppeteers in that scene. We'll get we can talk about that more when we get there, but
I just want to bring something up because I feel like it's not going to get talked about unless we do just talk about it. And the whole crystal ball bits that he's doing with his hand,
the juggling.
So
that wasn't him.
I believe that it wasn't him because there was a lot of shots where it's like he's this far back and the hands
over
are
his shoulder.
Yeah. Oh, over his shoulder. Well, that is a technique. I can't remember what it's called, but do you guys know who Curtis Connor is? He's
called ball work.
Drew Gooden or Danny Gonzalez. He's like a reactor on YouTube. And he has in the 90s or the early 2000s, there was a commercial, a late night commercial for these balls, and it was the same it was like the same 6 moves. You know, it's like you have to watch this tape and master the art of the ball, and it has a name.
I can do this part, I can do that part.
I think that I think Stivert has right, contact juggling. And it is a real thing that kind of came around and went real fast, like what's that?
It looks cool. Like it looks really cool in the movie. Like
a fad.
Like him doing that as like a weird thing is like, it's cool. Like he has a weird thing. He has lots of weird things, but that is the one constant weird thing that he's doing the entire time, right?
The cool thing about it is it's someone else doing it. So he, like David Bowie's there, and then the juggler guy has his arms like under his armpits or whatever, doing that juggling work or whatever, that maneuver work, and can't even see what he's doing. You know what I'm saying? Like he's doing it just out of sheer control.
So like someone put their arms through his armpits, and like David Bowie showed up on a set. He's like, "Listen, I tried to learn these balls, but I can't do it. I need someone else to do it for me."
Are you sure about that? Like,
because it looks like he's doing it.
It looks like he's doing it at certain points.
There's one part where he's sitting in a windowsill and he's like shifting the 3 of them around in his hand.
There might be 1 or 2 shots where it's him, but I'm thinking about when we first get introduced to him, when he comes to the bedroom after the baby.
Yeah, and he's doing the one-handed back and forth thing, and then
it's over his shoulder, right? When it's over his shoulder, and you see his hands doing the thing.
So wait, is this something you're certain of, or is this a theory?
This is my deep dive on the internet told me.
Okay.
Sorry,
I figured out what the thing was. The fad was called. It was called fushigi, and fushigi balls were essentially the same thing, and it was presented as like devil sticks, like the same.
Right,
there were people like in a park they could do like 4 moves, and they were like, we're professionals, and they could go like this.
There's like a guy there with devil sticks, the guy there with the fushimi balls, and there's some asshole with a lizard on his shoulder being like, "Hey, you guys want to smoke some?"
Somebody with pogs and 2 fucking yo-yos and a skateboard.
What a horrible,
and then someone doing the wave
before video games got good.
But like a banana. I'm not saying skateboarding as a fad, because obviously skateboarding as an extreme sport isn't, but I'm talking about banana boards from the 70s, which was a fad.
Those are back, man.
Banana boards are back.
They're called longboards.
No, banana boards are different things. Yeah, banana boards.
The banana boards, they're called penny boards now, and they are back.
Well, fuck me.
Yeah. One time I was talking to a guy who had one,
and I was like, talking about also, by the way.
I was like, "So what is this board?" He's like, "It's called a penny board." And I was like, "Oh, cool." And I was like, "Why so small?" And he's like, "Well, it's affordable, it's portable, and it's boardable." It's like, oh my!
Did you read that on the back of the box?
And I was like, "Are you a salesman?"
And then he was like, "Why so serious?"
I'm sold.
But he said it in a way that the last one, he started laughing afterwards, like he had just thought of it on the spot. So I was like, okay, maybe this guy like actually just thought of this. But yeah, he was getting shit from a lot of people carrying around his tiny little skateboard.
Hey, fuck you! You're not a real fucking skateboarder.
He was good on it too. He was so quick with it. It's such a good way to get around without having to pay for transit, and you know, you can dip off it and not worry about breaking your neck because it doesn't go so fast.
Maybe he's
anyway.
On a longboard.
So David Bowie shows up and he does, what was it called? Fushimi balls?
Fugish. I forget immediately.
Freaking Fugatti balls.
Fushigi.
Fushigi.
Okay. I'm gonna put it in the chat so we can refer to it.
Fushigi.
Fushigi.
And he says, "You're coming to my woo now. You're
Fukushima balls. Oh my god.
Fukushima balls.
Oh my god, Stiver.
And he gives her 13 hours to solve the puzzle of the labyrinth, and she says, "All right, feet, let's frickin' go," or whatever. And she rolls down and sees Hoggle pissing in a fountain, which is kind of weird.
Not for kids. Like, very PG-13.
Yeah, and then he starts killing fairies with like one of those old-timey spray things that you spray bugs with or whatever in cartoons.
I really loved that scene. This whole like sequence to me was like, oh, this is the kind of movie it's going to be. It doesn't keep up that brand of humor so much, but when you see him pissing all over the place, and then you see him, you know, because Sarah goes up to a fairy and she's like, "What are you doing to this fairy? These are nice fairies." And the fairy fucking bites her. And then she's like, "What, these fairies bite?" And he's just like 57, 58.
Yeah. He also says like, "What do you think they're going to do?" And she's like, "I thought they'd be nice."
Wishes?
And he's like, "You're an idiot, man. Stupid." I'm also like, he's counting them. Why? Why is he counting them? Is it just for a personal, like, he's got a vendetta against these fairies?
Before he met Sarah, he was a sadomasochist and did everything that the Goblin King told him to do. Also, this Hugin, what's his name? Hogwart.
She calls him Hogwart at one point, and everyone calls him the wrong name, to the point that it becomes confusing to the viewer, which is good. Where you're like, what is his name again? I can't remember because everyone called him like 10 different things.
I won't get into I didn't find as many like Final Fantasy. Like, it's very obviously for that Final Fantasy drew a lot of inspiration. I think Dark Crystal did it way more, because Final Fantasy is usually just like good versus evil. This is a little different. This is a little bit more like the story-driven Final Fantasy games. But the thing that I did notice was the Hoggle looks like the goblins from like most of the Final Fantasy series. That image of like a small little dude with a hat and like a knife, like goblins from Final Fantasy, they're based probably directly off of that goblin. How come you guys always just
conspiracy corner?
No.
Because I'm not familiar enough to be
so
like,
quiet after I say everything.
Well, because I don't know what you're fucking talking about. Like, if I was like, you guys know Yoda, right? You guys would be like, yeah, Yoda. Well, yeah, Yoda's based off a goblin from Lord of the Rings.
What about that Yoda? What about that Yoda from when they're in the Senate and he's got like a weird hairstyle?
I don't like that Yoda.
Are you talking about Yaddle?
Yeah, I am talking about Yaddle.
Yaddle is a lady Yoda, and her name is dumb, but she has a really cool backstory, and she's known as the one from below. And she once had to survive for 100 years in a dank cave prison with nothing to sustain her life force but the force itself.
See, I let you talk there. I let you talk, and I said something right after.
All right. So there's goblins in Final Fantasy look like Hoggle.
Yeah, I'm gonna put a picture.
Pogo.
There you go.
So then this guy Hoggle basically tells her to, you know, I'm not helping you. Why would I help you? I don't help anybody unless they give me gold or whatever the fuck.
I love gold.
I love shiny objects. And she goes deeper into the labyrinth. The difference between a maze and a labyrinth, obviously, is that the labyrinth has a center, and a maze is just one end to the other. Everybody knows that.
There.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for clarifying for our viewers.
Is that not Hoggle?
Goblin.
That looks like a bunch of pixels.
Squint.
Yeah. Go. Definitely looks like Hoggle to me.
Squint.
Maybe if I stand very far away. Oh, are those the eyes right there?
Yeah,
the
right,
white bits.
right here.
Yeah, with the green or the eyebrows.
Are they looking down?
Yeah, it's like,
Yeah. And he's
it's
got
like-
a little dagger, and he's got little horns on his hat.
I would say their ears, but
Oh, true, ears. Sorry, I thought they were horns.
anyway, now Stiver likes goblin.
So you're saying Zelda drew inspiration from your hoggle back there?
I think it's fair to say that anything that is very hard fantasy all draw off of the same sources at all times. And there are bits and pieces of Final Fantasy that definitely pull from high fantasy, as well as science fiction, as well as cyberpunk, as well as steampunk.
I went through it, and there's, well, you forgot to fucking mention cyberpunk. God damn it! So there's like 4.
I did say cyberpunk.
No, you mentioned it, but my whole thing was like, there's high sci-fi, which is like based off of like 60s pulp novels, and then there's like high fantasy, which is like Tolkien, and then there's like mid fantasy, not mid like the way we use mid now, but like medium fantasy, which draws from like a bunch of shit. And it's these kind of movies that are really weird mixed fantasies with goblins and actual magic,
goblins and hobgoblins and
goblins and
snob goblins.
That's the guy from Spider-Man, right?
That's the Demogoblin.
Yeah,
that's the one from Stranger Things, right?
No, that's Demogorgon.
That's from D&D.
Yeah. All of the characters in fucking that shit are named after D&D.
Bugbears.
Bugbears are goblins.
Owl bears. Scary. It's like an owl and a bear mixed together. Two things that seem like they're way more dangerous when they're combined than separate. Anyway. So she goes down the maze, and she gets immediately lost in a straight line, which is unfortunate because you're like, yeah, she can't find her way through here. She gives up for a moment. Yeah, she gives up for a moment. Worm falls to her butt, and then a little tiny worm says, "Hello there, hello," and it's this cute little worm who says, "Oh, you come in and make the message." And you're like, yes, this is great. My favorite character in the whole movie is the little worm. And
he's my second favorite character. My first favorite character is the dog that's sometimes a puppet, but sometimes a dog.
Yeah. Why isn't the puppet better? They made the goblin puppets dope. Why isn't the dog puppet dope?
It's true.
It's because it's like, imagine the amount of hairs you got to stick into that thing.
Yeah.
And also, it's fine. I like when he pops out and he's shaking like, and also like, when he's in this world, he no longer barks like a normal dog, which he does at the beginning of the movie. He barks like a person.
He makes horse sound.
He reminds me
he's
of the
making
dog.
a dog, like a dog human going like, "Arr, arr," like it's a human making a dog noise.
The puppet reminds me of the dog from Fraggle Rock, which is a puppet also. Remember the dog from Fraggle Rock?
So once they're in the labyrinth world, the only time the dog is a normal dog is when it's a long shot. Anytime it's a close-up after that, it is the puppet. And it's meant to be like everything she's seeing around her is become childish and cartoony.
Okay.
The only thing that isn't is the Goblin King, and it's because he's supposed to be more intimidating and threatening, like the real world. You know, you escape to a fantasy world because things seem easier and less terrifying. But the one thing that would be scary in this world would be somebody who looks and acts like an actual human person.
Speaking of that too, I rented this off YouTube, right? So I watched it in 1080p, which is almost like wasn't meant to be watched in that high definition, because there's a lot of inconsistency between like scenes sometimes, and this happened with the Dark Crystal as well, where the fucking green screen shit is just gross to look at because it's so like bad. But what I will say, something that I noticed is watching this movie in high definition reminds me of CanCon kids shows, because they were all very weird, and they're all very like the same kind of sci-fi, like might and magic kind of weirdness, and it all looks the same. Like this movie looks a lot like the TV program The Odyssey. Remember The Odyssey?
Oh yeah.
Where the kid had a concussion?
No, he was in a full-on coma for like 4 seasons, and then came out of the coma, and
it was like
could still go like this back.
It was Canadian. Yo, Ryan Reynolds was in that shit.
It's true.
Yeah,
and fucking Devin Sawa was in that shit.
It's true.
All right. You have any other actors you want to name from it?
Well,
But-
I do want to bring it back to the worm.
Are You Afraid of the
So-
Dog? Are You Afraid of the Dark was another show that kind of had the same look to it.
Well, yeah. Are You Afraid of the Dark was Vancouver. Goosebumps was Montreal and Toronto.
That's a
And-
little later. That looks a little bit more modern. I'm thinking like the
Goosebumps?
BFG. Goosebumps. I'm talking like the early 90s, like the Big Friendly Giant.
Well, yeah. I mean, Are You Afraid of the Dark and Goosebumps were like within the same.
I think
Like they
were
had
close.
crossover. Yeah, like they were
But,
still
like, the
existed at the same time.
The early Are You Afraid of the Dark came out in like 93 and it went until like 98.
Right. What?
Where
Sorry. The
Goosebumps
different
came out in, like,
differentiation that
96 or
I'm trying to make
97.
is that
Yes.
there are different studios in Vancouver versus
Right.
Toronto and Montreal, and they do have very distinct and different visual styles in terms of like the way they're filmed and shot because it's different teams, right? That's what I'm
Stuyvesant
trying to
says, "Are you afraid of the dog?
I like
You afraid of the dog?
Are you afraid of the dog?"
I am afraid of the dog in the intro of Goosebumps when it
I like-
barks the theme song at you.
I like to keep. Woof, 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 woof.
Does it
I
have
to
like
keep-
does it have like glowing eyes too or something?
Yes,
Yeah,
it did have.
yeah, I like to keep the comments to the end, but if people are gonna throw bangers like that, I'm gonna
Are you
I'm gonna
afraid of the
mention
dog?
them. I'm gonna
Yeah.
talk to the chat if you're throwing out bangers like that, Stiverton.
Hell
Um,
yes.
All right, so the worm directs her through the maze, and he says,
Can I
"Don't
talk
go
about the
that
worm
way.
right quick?
Never go."
Can I talk about the worm right quick?
Okay.
So the worm tells her to go that way.
Oh,
God,
yeah,
it's literally the
shit.
thing I was about to say.
Yeah, you guys
Okay,
fight
yeah,
over
go
that
ahead. You
right
can
there.
do it. You can do it.
Well, I don't want to take your thunder. This is your host. You do it. Maybe I'll
No,
add
you
on
said
to
you
it.
needed to practice your British accent, so go ahead. It's your
No,
your
I
spotlight
can't.
now.
No, I can't.
You could have
Can't
been
do that.
done by now. So basically, the wall tells him the worm tells him to go one way, and then
I thought that Kalen was gonna have an interesting anecdote about like how the puppet. Of
I
the
do have
worm
an
was
interesting
made or
anecdote.
something, and he's like, "I'm just gonna say the thing you were about to say."
No. Okay. Here it comes. Okay. Worm tells her to go one way. She goes that way. It's like, oh, you should have gone that way when it went straight to the castle or whatever, right?
there's a little
So,
bit more
like-
dramatic irony than that, though.
In one
It's drawn
sense,
out and it's very good and well done.
right. But in one sense, he's directing her the wrong way. In one sense, but having gone the wrong way, she meets the people she meets. She becomes more prepared to deal with the castle when she gets there, as opposed to having gone there straight off the get-go.
Yeah,
So
that's a good point. I like
it
that.
kind of ties in with I think I talked about it with the last episode about like having to go through hardships to actually be ready.
Yeah,
for
she
something.
she learns like at least 5 or 6 lessons throughout this movie that she would not have learned had she gone straight to the castle.
However,
Yeah,
if she was a speed runner, she'd just do it again.
She
and go
glitched
left.
through the wall.
Yeah. Go
Yeah.
left. She'd know how to beat the final boss.
Yeah.
Well,
Grab him by
there's
his crystal balls and smash
there's
them.
there's a final mid boss that she would have to deal with. I don't know if she could do it without. So I kind of broke these characters into classic RPG archetypes, and she was the mage.
Well, so
She was
did
like
the movie.
She was the healer. She was the healer. The big dude, Lauren,
Ludo.
Ludo was the like tank, and then
But he was also like he summoned rocks to help.
That's
like,
true,
but
He had more
sometimes-
magic than anybody else.
but it was because it was a roar. It wasn't like magical. It was like a roar. Although those rocks were
You
going
made it
backwards.
rumble
They were like sentient rocks. Remember, like when he's
at the
hung
end
upside down. When
Yeah.
he's hung upside down, little rocks roll to her foot
That's true.
so that she can throw them.
Okay, so
and you
he's
realize later that he's the one that's calling those rocks.
but
so
he's
that
a
she can-
tank because he tanks Demetrius or whatever his name is. Demetios.
Didymus or something like that.
Didymus is the support character. He like casts the buffs.
And comic relief, or most comic relief.
That's the buff he's casting, is easing everybody for battle. And then Guggenheim is the DPS, because he actually does the actual combat most of the
Who's
time.
Guggenheim?
yeah. Are you talking
Giggler.
about the Goblin Prince King?
No, Gorgon.
Hoggle?
Hoggle.
Guggenheim over here. And then the dog was named like Ambrosius or something.
Yeah.
Well, yeah,
That
Ambrosius.
seemed like it meant something. Did it mean something?
Well,
Like
ambrosia is
ambrosia.
like the fruit of the gods that when gifted to humans, they have like immortality for a little bit of time or whatever. And it's supposed to be like the most delicious thing you've ever had.
Welcome back to Jason's Theory Corner, where I break down the theories that I have while watching a movie. And I would like to posit that Final Fantasy VII ripped off directly Didymus riding around on Ambrosius.
Or something like that.
Because there's a character named Kate Sith, and it's a Moogle being ridden around by a cat, and the cat talks, and the Moogle doesn't say anything.
I don't listen, like when you say rip off, sometimes it kind of aggravates me a little bit because like it's not, they're not ripping anything off. They're taking an idea that is a cute and fun idea and paying homage or reusing it or recycling it, because it's not the first time an animal has ridden an animal. And
reinventing.
Yeah. But specific, it's not a reinvention, and I don't mean rip off. It's just that's for dramatic effect.
I know, but I don't like it. I don't like when you say it.
It's hyperbole.
You're
adjacent.
dramatically affecting him.
What my point is I think that they took this idea because of how specifically similar it is.
Right. Dog riding a dog, you mean, like in a cat riding a cat sort of thing?
No,
Moogle,
like,
it looks like a cat, right?
Moogles kind of look like cats, but they're kind of like weird woodland creatures that don't exist in any realm. Literally being ridden around like by a cat. Well, they kind of look more like a mouse, if you want to be specific about it.
So what I'm trying to say is that you could say that Demetrius or whatever his name is kind of looks like a dog, but he also kind of looks like a fox, but he also looks like a weasel, but he also looks like he could be, yeah. Me and Danny were watching this and we were like, what is he? I was like, I don't know what he's supposed to be.
Like a weasel fox.
I thought he was a fox, and then he's like barking like a dog at one point. I'm like,
there's more to it. You have the Moogle doesn't say anything in Final Fantasy, and the dog like only barks, doesn't speak any human language. And both of the top characters are wisecracking and like, hey, like Kate Sith talks like, what's up guys? What's going on? I'm Kate Sith. What's this freaking guy over here? What's going on about? And I know that because of the way that I read his diet. There's no voice acting in Final Fantasy VII, but then they put out Advent Children, and in Advent Children, you hear his voice, and he actually talks like this, which is kind of what Didymus sounds.
Maybe they
don't worry, Ambrosius. I think we got him surrounded.
They bugged your house, and they heard you doing that. And they're like, we got gold here.
They ripped you off.
I'm not taking credit. But yes, I was going to say this too. Did they get Hogwarts from that throwaway line from Labyrinth?
I'm going to say hogs and Hogwarts are a thing that exist outside of the realm of this movie. And it's probably just a thing people say in Britain. But
was that horrible anti-trans woman who wrote Harry Potter? J.K. Rowling? Was she what's it called? A trilf? What's it called when you're the worst? Turf?
A trilf? That sounds like a turf I'd like to fuck. I revoke that. I'm gonna blacklist that. I'm gonna, it's redacted. I didn't say that.
I think as far as jokes go,
I'll take blame.
Okay. Yeah, J.K. Rowling's J.K. Rowling's probably did steal it because she stole a lot of her ideas. Even like LaGuardia, the airport. I bet you she went to LaGuardia and she was like, Wingardium Leviosa.
You mean LaGuardia?
Yeah, LaGuardia Leviosa. That's where she came up with the spell for sure.
She was writing the books. And she was just is LaGuardia in New York?
Yeah, she was just in New York, and she was like, you know what? Everything's being Leviosa here.
Yeah.
LaGuardia Leviosa. And she's like, well, I can make it better. LaGuardia.
And then she did, and then she...
And now she's a billionaire who hates trans people for
no reason.
Seemingly no reason. She just doesn't like the idea.
Actually, Stuyverton does make a good point. Rowling just ripped off British people.
Is she not British?
She is
British. She's very British.
Sorry, Steve. I was thinking about this earlier, and what I mean to do is compare and contrast Final Fantasy to specific movies and specific tropes I see in movies. When I say ripped off, I don't actually mean rip off.
I know what you mean. It's just like because people say rip off all the time and they're like legitimately up in arms about it. And I'm like,
no,
stop.
Here's what I'll say. I think Kate Sith from Final Fantasy VII is paying homage to Didymus and Ambrosiatron 5000.
Ambrosius.
I'm
Ambrosius. Yeah, I like
yeah.
I like that the dog makes horse noises when it's appropriate.
Yep, I did notice that.
But she then finds her way through the maze to a point where she comes across Ludo, I believe at this point, right? Or close to it, and Ludo is strung up by his legs, being surrounded by a bunch of little goblin warrior guys. They all have numbers on their helmets, which makes them seem like they're supposed to be an elite unit, I suppose. And this is where you see Ludo's power at first, but you don't even really realize it because these rocks are rolling up to her feet, and you think, oh, the labyrinth is helping her. But later you discover that Ludo has the ability to conjure rocks to his aid when he needs them.
Airbending or rock bending.
Well, it's not even that, because he later, the one guy says, you can call upon the rocks for aid, and then he says, rocks friend, or whatever. Oh my god. This guy literally just calls the rocks to his aid and they listen to him. And that's when you get the fart rocks that come out of the fart river or whatever.
And that's why you should always be friends with everyone, because you never know how they can help you.
Well, I mean, if they're yelling racial slurs, probably don't befriend them.
Yeah, those are
they can help you against other racial slurring people.
No, they can't, because then you're just around two people
yelling
racial slurs.
This is needing to stop this before it gets out of control here.
Before this rock starts tumbling down
so fast we can't stop it.
If somebody walks up to you and stabs you, they've done nothing to help you, and they probably never will. Unless it's one of those.
They're good at stabbing things. So when you need something stabbed, you call them up.
No, no, I would never call a person who stabbed or tried to stab me. We've traumatized Steve.
Steve's gone.
He went through a situation that involved that. So my bad. It's content CW, TW, trigger warning, stabbing. Apologize.
Is that actually what happened, or is he just getting a drink?
Probably a little column A, a little column B.
LaGuardia Leviosa.
Okay, figured me. Who's looking at me?
So she helps him down. He immediately becomes her friend, and we get a couple of moments of respite from the labyrinth attempting to kill her before she is fell down into a hole. Or wait, no, she's trying
Did we talk about the shield men and the riddle?
That's what I was about to talk to. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
I was about to say we missed
the guards.
The moment where she has to talk to the shield guys, which are very cool puppets. I really like these guys a lot.
What are they doing behind that shield?
Exactly. It begs the question, what's going on? What did you say?
It kind of reminded me of playing cards, like where they have the top and the bottom.
For sure. Yeah. I think that was probably the base concept idea. They're like, they want them to be playing cards where the head and the bottom talk, and like.
But how do we make it weird?
Yeah, how do we make it weirder? Like the foot just coming out and stuff is so gross and strange.
And what's happening underneath? I hope. Well, you know what? I hope they're for Pride Month. I hope they're not wearing clothes.
Yeah, and which one's the top, which one's the bottom? I guess it depends on like how they're arranged that day.
Depending on the part of the cartwheel they're in.
Yeah.
You can't take anything for granted in this labyrinth.
What does that mean?
Yeah, what you could do you have is there more to that?
Anyway, it's a classic labyrinth puzzle, which is one of these guys lies, one of them tells the truth. The answer to the puzzle, or the answer to the riddle, is you ask one of them what the other one would say, and whatever they say is the opposite of what the other person would say, and the truth of what they would say, so you know which door to go out. It's a very old puzzle. It's been around forever, but it's in a lot of stuff. It's
Diverton, I'm glad
I've heard that riddle. Yeah,
I'm glad you asked. in Final Fantasy IX, there are two jesters who look very similar to these characters, probably paying homage, not ripping off.
Ripping? They're ripping again?
And in Chrono Trigger, there are actual shields who do like a state change where the head and arms change, and it kind of reminded me of this as well. I think that the two jesters in Final Fantasy IX are directly paying homage to this because they do speak. They don't like give you riddles, but they speak in riddle. They speak in riddle. You know
I think
what I mean?
not to like get bogged down in the language we use and stuff. I think that one of the reasons that I do get annoyed when people say ripping off all the time is because, like, I watched the Doctor Strange movie recently, and there's that cool fight at the end with the music notes.
Yeah,
I've literally done that in D&D before, where people are pulling musical notes off, and I thought it was like such a cool, unique idea. And like, I could go into that movie and be like, damn it, I thought of that. But then I was like, I was happy that they were doing it, because I was like, that I had
someone else thinks like me.
I had such a clear idea of this thing that I wanted to do. I did it, and then a movie did it, and it was super duper cool to me.
That's an example of the collective unconscious sort of, though. I
know, but what I'm trying to say is, if I had done that after the movie had come out, even if I hadn't seen it, somebody would say that I ripped it off.
Did you get this from Doctor Strange?
Yeah, exactly. Where it's like, no, I came up with it myself, and it just so happens that somebody else also thought of that idea. It's not like the most unique idea ever to come to page.
My only MCU character that I like is Doctor Strange, and I've only seen Doctor Strange Part 1, and I've only seen Doctor Strange Part 2, and I have no fucking clue what's going on.
Are you from Brooklyn?
I love this character you've developed here.
You're like, now if you excuse me, I'm gonna eat this box of cannoli. Fucking phenomenal.
Fucking phenomenal. Oh, hey, look, it's Dex Durden saying exactly what you're saying, Steve. So he's ripping you off tonight.
Yeah, no, Dex is completely accurate there. It's like anytime you see something that has been done in The Simpsons, it's like, of course The Simpsons did it. It's been around for 32 fucking years.
Simpsons did it. Simpsons did it.
I'd like to point to a song as well. This happens in music a lot. There's like 4 songs ever. And the Bare Naked Ladies song, It's All Been Done, is basically about that as well.
Right. And I mean, it's that's why I get kind of irked with the phrase ripping off, because I feel like sometimes you can come to a conclusion that doesn't necessarily have to have been ripped off. It's just like you also came to the natural conclusion of whatever it is you're trying to come to, and it can still be good and it can still be nice. And as long as it feels fresh, you're not ripping it off. You're just making something out of something else, and
I'll tell you what I'll do going forward. I never meant to say ripping off, as I said. I'm going to specifically try and say paying homage.
Okay. That's
classified.
Listen,
me off.
Unless it's Quentin Tarantino again, and he ripped off those.
I was just trying to explain what it is about it that irks me, and I think I successfully explained that to you guys.
You did.
You don't
classified ripped me off though.
And the fact that I've already explained it,
there's no way classified ripped you off. It's impossible.
Okay, anyway, let's move on. I had the
idea for the O Canada song before him.
Did you say it out loud to him, and then he was, because that happened to me with Brian McQuarrie from Picnic Face. I said a sketch to him, and then the sketch happened on the Picnic Face TV show. So
who ripped off? Which one?
It was stupid. I said I had this. I was talking to him on New Year's, and it might be like a collective, like not collective unconscious, but it might have been an unconscious thing. But I was like, I have this dumb idea for a sketch that is just the person just saying to the left, and they to the left like forever, like they just keep going and going. And then they did an interstitial on an episode.
To the left.
And then the movie Us was made, and they made that line all the way to the left of the edge of the continent. So they ripped off your idea.
No,
Jordan Peele is a thief.
I thought they held. I thought it was a Hands Across America thing.
Yeah, no, I was just making a really great joke. Okay, let's keep moving, guys, because we are a little bit too bogged down into, like, I didn't want to. This is what I didn't want to happen. Basically, is me.
Fair enough. I am going to read what Dex Durden said, because he's very introspective all the time, and I wish he would come by more for these things, because he's a great addition, as well as Staverton. Life is a constant battle of trying to be original. Lol. If I can have a single original thought, I'll have lived. And then he said, "Nah, I ripped that shit." And the reason I wanted to read that is because a reason that I I'm not afraid to get up on stage and do stand up. I'm afraid of writing a whole bunch of shit. And since I'm such a fan of stand up comedy, I've just jacked a whole bunch of ideas that I've seen other stand up comedians
that's
do.
Completely fair. I tried it once, and what I did was I just literally took stories from my actual life, so I didn't run into the issue of that story being retold, because it's very rare that all the details will line up with something else. And even after that, I did have somebody come up and be like, this really reminded me of this thing that happened to this other. And I was like, oh, no, this is an actual thing. I can show you the grinder. Here you go.
But I will say about that, I did have a very good conversation with Mark Little about this exact thing. And he said basically what you're saying is if the stories are authentic enough to you, you will be able to rise above that. My other problem is I'm not a very good storyteller. So even if I was able to come up with a bunch of funny shit to say, you've seen me try to recite jokes. I can talk and talk and talk for forever, but if I try to like say a thing that I've seen, my brain just shuts down.
Right.
Just, you know what I mean? So
yeah, no,
that's part of it.
I know exactly what you mean.
Oh, thanks.
No, yeah, I've seen your brain shut down all the time.
Many times.
So many times. No, I know, and sorry, what I meant to say is I know what you mean, because I've had the same problems before. I think that like storytelling it's really hard, and to do it appropriately, or to like have the idea of what you want to convey to somebody and do that successfully is extremely difficult. And I think that me saying this is now bringing me back to this movie, which is an extremely interesting compiling of ideas that don't necessarily make an extremely cohesive story, but each chunk of it is interesting enough that you kind of are interested about what's happening within each scene, which is almost as successful as telling a narrative that goes from beginning to end, that is compelling the entire way through. If you can hold someone's attention for each scene, then you've got them the entire time, because as soon as they lose interest with that scene and it's over, you find a new way to gain their interest. And that was something that I think this movie does very well. And when she falls into that hole and all those hands are grabbing her as she's falling, it's probably the most like weird, gross, uncomfortable part of the movie where I'm like, ugh, imagine falling down. It wasn't
as inappropriate as I thought it was going to be.
I think it's horribly inappropriate, but what I'm saying is imagine like not necessarily the visuals of it, but like imagining that. Imagine falling down a tunnel of hands grabbing you, the whole, like every inch of it is just a new hand touching you and grabbing you and then holding you for a minute, and then a bunch of hands being like, hello there, what the hell are you doing in a hole? I
did like the faces they were making. That was
really, really cool.
I was of two minds for this whole scene. I was like, this is a creepy, like it's objectively creepy because she's 14.
I don't think that it's objectively creepy. I think it is creepy.
Well, it's objectively creepy. Well, it being creepy is it being objectively creepy. But my point is it was creepy to write that into a movie. Where there's already this weird David Bowie sex pervert pursuing a 14-year-old. And then keep
saying that, but he doesn't really do anything sexual.
Oh, he does.
The entire time.
The very end, his very
the
final
end, it gets
shit,
a little,
it gets a little bit too like. Anyway, my point is this scene is saved by the puppetry, the hand puppetry. And I don't like, if they didn't touch her, if she landed, if the hands weren't touching her on the way down and she landed on like a ledge, and then they were coming up and be like, hey, Sarah, how you doing today? I would have been like perfectly fine. But the fact that they're like touching her on the way down and then they grab her in like a weird way and
they hold her in place. Yeah. And you can see they're grabbing her shoulder and her like waist and her legs and stuff. It is, it's gross. It is gross, but I don't know. For me, when I was watching it, I was imagining myself in the situation, and it was equally as uncomfortable. Where I was like, I can't imagine.
Have you guys ever gone body surfing?
No.
Go on.
That's it. I went body surfing, and that's what the hands do.
Oh, yeah. But sorry, but I thought you meant body surfing like wakeboarding with like a little bodyboard. I was like, what the fuck?
I knew exactly what Kaylin meant, and it's funny that you did it. I like.
You mean
that.
when you're? Yeah, no, I haven't ever gone body
Or
surf.
crowd surfing.
Crowd
or
surf.
whatever.
If you would have
surfing.
said crowd surfing, I would have known.
My bad. My bad.
You had bodyboarding and crowd surfing mixed together there, I think. But no, I've always been too much of a wuss. I'm a big dude. Not. I'm fat now, but I've always.
Many hands
tall.
make for light work.
It's true, but don't touch my.
Yeah, and I think
penis,
like
please.
we can sit here and we can criticize this scene itself, but I think what it was trying to do, it accomplished, which was to make a very weird, uncomfortable, and creepy scene do what it was meant to do. And I can't imagine that anything uncouth was happening on set.
No, that's true. She was also so sure of herself going into it. She like solves the riddle, and she's like, obviously, because I'm a genius, and then she falls into the pit of death.
Yeah.
So the other way, I assume, was like literally a pit of fire, like literally death.
You know what? Dexter just said a thing that I agree with, which is depending on the crowd that you crowd surf through, it can be amazing or it can be creepy, because there are creeps that will just grab your fucking dick or your butthole or your tit. Or
that's why a lot of times ladies don't like to crowd surf, because grabby men at metal shows and stuff will get grabby and gross.
Yeah. Anyway, the saving grace of this moment that makes it equally as creepy but also really interesting is the faces that they're able to create out of these like stone glove hands, which like every single one of those faces you see what they're trying to accomplish. You're like, that's a mustache, those are eyebrows, that's a nose poking through. Like all of it really works, and I think it's one of my favorite parts of the movie, not because of what's happening and how gross it is, but in the moment where they do this weird thing that you're so used to them having these really intricate puppets, and then they create essentially like ethereal puppets out of just hand motions, which is like really cool. It's really cool and interesting, and I liked it a lot. Now let's get out of here before somebody calls the cops on me.
I wrote
creatures whose heads come off. Let's talk about those guys.
I wrote she falls down the helping hands molestation tunnel. So let's move on.
Yes. All right.
Hey, that's his head. Hey, that's my head.
She gets to the bottom, and she gets to the bottom. She meets Hoggle again, and this is when he begins to seemingly want to help her for whatever reason. But you later learn that it's the Goblin King that's telling him to.
Hoggle wants to. The Goblin King wants Hoggle to lead her back to the beginning, and that's been his role this whole time.
But she gives him a bracelet, which turns his opinion and his mind into wanting to help her for real, because he wants a friend more than to be the Also, one of the other really good gags
lapdog
is when they leave this moment. It's not like it is a nice moment in the movie, but it's also like we don't really need to sit here and dwell on it because nothing really crazy happens. But the one thing that I love, the gag of him putting the door up where there's nothing and then opening it, and it's a shitty closet full of garbage, and then closing it again and then opening it and then it's a way out. It's like one of those things that, like, if you were to see that as a kid on like a stage play or something, you'd be like, I just witnessed real magic.
Real magic that was magical.
Yeah, and the gag is good. Like, it works in the movie because it's all one shot. And you can, if you think about it logically, you can figure out how they did it, but it's like cool. It's still cool, and it makes you kind of buy into the world of that like shitty sort of like set-based theater you may have gone to when you were a kid, where you saw like, The Wizard of Oz or Neverending Story, the play, or some shit like that, and like they would do things like that really kind of sold you in the moment. And I like that kind of stuff, and it's one of the reasons the movie is successful to me, is like, I maybe not be into this scene, but then they do something like that and I'm like, oh, I wish I was a kid again.
Yeah.
To have my mind blown by something like that.
But Steve, the problem is what you've told us about your childhood in these kinds of movies. Like, I think you would have been freaked and spooked by this.
Okay, so like I was really freaked out and spooked by a lot of stuff when I was a kid, but stuff like this that is inherently creepy but is also designed for children didn't scare me, and I was like super sold on all of it. Like,
okay,
when the Nightmare Before Christmas came out, I saw it in theaters, I got it on VHS, and I was like, yes, this is the best fucking movie. And then I would like show it to my cousins and they would all run out of the room. And I was like, why are you guys so scared of this movie? And there's like a child on the screen holding a severed head. And I'm like, I don't understand why this is scary to you guys.
When the bad guy dies towards the end, he just like shoots like fluff everywhere, like
bugs. He's made of bugs.
He's made of bugs.
Mr. Oogie Boogie.
So yeah, it is like it is a weird thing where like scary things that were considered scary, like if somebody hyped up a scary movie to me, I would be very scared of it. But something like this, I would watch it, and though it is very creepy visually, I would be super into everything that was happening. It wouldn't scare me because I was so into everything.
And I will say I
was a weird kid, guys. Very weird kid.
I've said before, like gore in video games has never affected me, but it took me until my like mid-20s to be able to handle television gore in The Walking Dead, and that's what desensitized me. And now nothing's off nothing's off the table. But when I was a kid, I was like you. These kinds of none of this freaked me out. The first Ninja Turtles movie is not a kids movie, and it has really shocking violence in it. The Shredder falls off a building and then gets graphically eaten by a trash compactor in a garbage truck, and then
Casey Jones just like whoops. Like, I'm gonna murder this guy.
And then 10 seconds later, Splinter makes a dumb joke and then says, he does not make a joke, he makes a funny. Yeah. And then he says, I made a funny. And the juxtaposition between those two things is incredible. And I feel like this movie falls into that Big Trouble in Little China, Ninja Turtles 1 and 2, Ghostbusters 1 and 2. It falls into that like fantasy, almost horror like realm for kids.
Yeah, I almost wish that like I had a different sort of like introduction to a lot of movies that I now really like. Like if I had seen Big Trouble from Little China or in Little China when I was younger and nobody had been like, this is a scary movie to me. Like my mom would have told me that movie was scary because it's too sexual or something, you know, like she would have been like, no, you can't watch this, it's too scary. And then I would be scared of it because my mom told me it was scary, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Whereas she would let me watch something like this because it's not technically scary, though there are scary imagery. She wouldn't think that it would be too scary for me.
But in my case, I watched RoboCop when I was 7 and it just fucked me up.
Like my mom would 100% tell me that RoboCop is scary, even though it's not scary, but there's like some super scary imagery in it. Some
really gross, weird shit in it that wasn't even that weird or gross for the 80s.
Yeah.
And watching it now, it's laughable. It's comedic in how bad it is, but it's still the ideas they get into your head, man. They get in there and they burrow and they expand. Yeah, they expand.
Yeah, but sometimes they expand your mind as well. They might expand into fears, but they also might make you more creative, which is important. Creativity is important, guys.
Important influencer.
So he leads her out of the cave, and this is where they go into a darkened tunnel where they meet once again the Goblin King, and he's dressed up almost like a weird plague doctor, and he goes, what's going on here? Nothing. And he's like, well, it's me, I'm back, and I'm even sexier than before.
It's my new sexy clothes that I've changed out of and back into.
And he basically chases her off and says like, oh, what are you doing? If you think that you can just fuck me around, I'm going to dip you toes to tip in the bog of eternal stench. And he's like, oh God, no!
I don't want to go there. I hate the smell of stink. And then we got a great thing that I think the Ninja Turtles pay homage to. The front of the cleaner looks exactly like those drillers from Ninja Turtles, the cartoon.
Yeah. Also, but then this is my second favorite gag in the movie, is when this drill is coming down the tunnel for sure.
And then they get out of the way, but then it's
also tense the way it's filmed. Like he throws the ball at first and it like goes down, and it's a really good effect where it like blinks and then all the lights come on and it's coming at them. And they are bashing on it, it's coming down, it is tense, it's a good tense moment, even though nothing bad is going to happen. You're like, how are they going to get out of this one? And they knock down the wall, and as it passes, it's like being operated by a bunch of little fucking people and like
full on
goblins.
steampunk.
Yeah, it's great. That is my second favorite moment in the whole movie is when it passes, because you're like, what is it going to be on the other side? And it's just like, it's like this thin and like a bunch of people like pulling levers and working like giant bike pedals.
Yeah.
So good. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Jameson. I just got really excited because it's my favorite.
No, you said
Gag.
the whole thing that I was gonna say. That's all. It's all good, man.
And then they go out onto the area where, oh god,
Is it the junkyard? Is it the
No,
junkyard?
no. It's like
No,
it's
the
a
junkyard's after
terrace.
this.
They walk out into a terrace, and it's got an old man who seems to be like a
Right.
beggar, and he's
Yeah.
got a bird. He's got a bird hat on.
Oh,
and that
right.
bird hat, I think, might be in the Legend of Zelda: The Minish Cap for the Game Boy Advance.
More ripping.
It's not ripping; it's paying homage, and I just came up with that right now. That may have been a homage.
I think
payment.
the idea of a talking hat is not a new,
but it's
idea.
specifically a bird.
You know who else fucked it up? J.K. Rowling, the Trilf. That fucking Trilf.
Leviosa LaGuardia over here.
That freaking sorting hat.
That freaking sorted hat over here. Sorting freaks.
Gryffindor. Whatever.
Freaking. I've never seen. I don't know anything about Harry Potter. I've only seen the Philosopher's Stone and bits and pieces of the one.
You know, the movies get
with the
way better
ghosts.
after.
I know.
Right.
That's going to be one of those things where I go through them. I'm trying to do that with Hunger Games. I've made it halfway through the first one. It's fine.
Weird that you started with Hunger Games and not Harry Potter.
I'm just trying to go through things.
You should watch Battle Royale.
I've seen Battle Royale.
Yeah.
Okay, that's
you know
all
what the
you
great
need
thing about Battle Royale is that it's
all you
one
need.
movie and not 8 movies.
I think there's 2 of them though, aren't there? Didn't they make a sequel to Battle Royale? Didn't they call it Squid Game
or whatever it's called?
Didn't they call it what's that Stone Cold Steve Austin movie that where instead of kids it's convicts?
It's convicts and they all have like bombs on their ankles or some shit. Yeah. It's called like Convict or something.
Condemned. It's the Condemned.
We're the Condemned.
Andy Butis. Sorry if I'm
I think it's boy lettuce.
it's Andy it's French. It's boy lettuce. You don't want them touching your wallet. I forget what the reference was to. So thanks for coming.
Yes.
Said yes.
Boy lettuce.
Yeah,
boy lettuce is correct.
I believe it's pronounced Andy Boel Lettuce.
So they talk to this guy, puppeteered by Frank Oz, I might add, just so you guys know. Not voiced, but puppeteered. The guy with the bird on his head. And so they give him like advice, or they give the both of them advice, but it's not really advice, but it is sort of advice.
Was it a symbiotic relationship?
Well, the bird at the end says like, it's so invigorating being your hat, but like clearly sarcastically or whatever.
Yeah.
Your Minish Cap.
Yeah. But they give her like this sort of advice where it's like all this sort of like backwards Yoda logic where it's like, sometimes to go backwards you must first go forward. Like, what the fuck does any of this mean? And,
that makes sense.
I guess. Sure, but like you could say that about anything, Kalen. I could say that to you in any situation and you would
That's the beauty of it.
Yeah.
I wrote Birdhead Man has nightmare eyes because this was a moment that I noticed that his eyes, like the things in his head, I know that you know what eyes are, but the things in the puppet's head were very expressive in a similar way to the Gelflings.
Like lifelike?
Yeah, they had like the eyelids were really effective, and like the way they moved around were really
the
effective.
eyes had a real uncanny valley value to them. That was a lot like the Gelfling. There was some character in Dark Crystal last week that I can't remember who it is now. I think it was just the Gelflings in general, but they were more Deadeye. It was something, but it just had that like not glowing like the goblins at the beginning.
No, like glassy or whatever.
But really like glassy. Yeah, they look like marbles.
Well,
almost.
they're probably made of glass.
Absolutely, they are.
Yeah, but No, I agree, and I took note of that as well while I was watching it. That I think out of a lot of the eye movements in this movie, that bird was it stuck with you the most out of like expressiveness, and it kind of like almost contrasted a little bit more to Hoggle and even the guy that's sitting on top of, where you do notice that these marbles that are meant to look like eyes, but they don't have the same sort of realism to them. You said uncanny valley, and I agree with that, where it's like the closer you get to something real, the more unnerving it is. And that bird, I think, probably had the most unnerving eyes of most of the puppets in the movie. She pays with a ring, ding, for the advice. Hoggle's upset about
That
it.
ring seemed way nicer than the bracelet.
I'm pretty sure it's all just shitty, like
it's just shitty, like
14-year-old
25-cent,
yeah.
those 25-cent machine jewelry things.
Exactly. Yeah.
Or that store Claire's in the mall that just sells like crappy, silver bullshit. This kind of silver that'll turn your finger green.
Yeah.
I think it's all that, because in the 80s, I don't know if you know this, she literally had, like, when you look at her room, she has a bunch of 80s shit in there too. Like, she has a Cats poster, for instance, and she was definitely the kind of girl that was like, I want to go to whatever the mall store that sold that shit was and get like all kinds of cool jewelry. I had cousins that I have had cousins that loved that Claire's jewelry.
I mean, I went to Claire's a couple times. I was a real fucking gay kid, so I bought some weird shit.
Like what?
I'd buy like a necklace that was like too tight, but it was made of metal.
Choker.
Or I'd buy like a bracelet that was like studded, but pink fake leather, but studded. A couple rings.
I got some dope head wraps from the dollar store the other day.
What does that mean?
Head wraps.
Head wraps? Yeah, what do you mean by that?
Like headbands?
Well, it's like a scarf,
buffs.
but I tied around my head like Mick Jagger.
Like a buff?
Or like Tyler. What's that Tyler guy's name?
Tyler
Perry.
Tyler Perry. Medea goes to Claire's.
Yeah. And then
Ludo falls down a hole.
They get separated, and then this is the moment where she runs into the weird sort of feathery monsters that can remove their limbs, and they do a very extensive dance number. And
we are getting late, so I am letting you just like do your thing. I did want to note that there is a subplot where the Goblin King gives Hoggle an orb, an orb that turns into a peach that will later poison her. I want to set that up just so.
Well, that was after this. I was gonna
exactly, but the scene where he gives it to him happens in between these moments, and then he tells, that's the way I have it written here, and then he tells Hoggle that if she kisses him, he will turn into the prince of the land.
Oh, sorry.
Land
yes.
of stench,
sorry. I thought you meant where he gives it to her. Where he gives it to her is after this, but yes.
When Hoggle gives it to her, but the Goblin.
Yes, when the Goblin King gives it to Hoggle, yeah.
I don't like to be pedantic when somebody else is doing the story. I just wanted to bring that up because it's going to seem weird when we get to the. Anyway, I think
I was going to say when he gives her the peach, I was going to be like earlier. The Goblin King gave him a.
Cool.
I know it's there. The peach is in my mind. But
I thought it was an apple until I thought it was a peach. Then I was like, that's an apple, and then it was clearly a peach. And then
it kind of looked like the Crash Bandicoot fruit.
That's a mango. Crash Bandicoot. Don't call him that. It's a hate crime.
Nope, inappropriate.
He's like,
Steve, save us.
Oh, excuse me. Oh God. Hate crime reported. So
and now for a word from
when you know how this scene is, oh my God, they're really after us here.
I've done it again.
Yeah, you shouldn't have derailed us so hard. Now it's the fruit police.
They're really mad.
The hot cops. So this scene it doesn't look great now. But knowing how it was done and watching the making of for this scene is actually like, it's wild how they did this stuff. It's like 4 to 8 people puppeteering like one puppet at a time, and like they rip the head off, and like one guy's got it on a stick and like bringing it down. They're all wearing complete I think it was just black outfits, and they had it
That's
on
what
a
I
black
was gonna
background. And like because they hadn't really pioneered green and blue screening yet. It was like this is like Lucasfilm just trying to figure out how to do this kind of stuff, and they're doing the same tricks they did in like Star Wars and things like that. And so they're trying to do it with these puppets, and they're all fluffy and shit. So it's like you can see these hard white lines around them, and it's really unfortunate.
It's happening to all three of us right now with this basic like chroma key technology that we have. Like sometimes it looks pretty good, but like if you look between my fingers, it breaks, and you can see
my arms disappear if I lift them up too high.
Yeah.
But I mean, this is like
my hair gets cut off.
This took hundreds of hours to do in 1986.
Yeah, and it still doesn't look great. And like it's unfortunate because watching the making of that scene, I saw it again in that the documentary about the guy who plays Elmo, and like this is again one of his big breaks. Elmo had not even been created as a character yet in Sesame Street, but the actor who plays Elmo was an extremely accomplished puppeteer. He voices, I think, all of these puppets. I think he does all the voices of these puppets. These 4 specific puppets of whatever they're supposed to be. I assume
Goggins or something like that or something.
They were called Fiery something.
Right. And again, like the thing that sucks about it is that it doesn't look great with what they've done, but when you watch the artistry behind it, you feel like, you know what, maybe it's worth it. And at the end of the day, this is like the thing that got that guy out of being just a puppeteer and becoming like Elmo, and now he's probably a fucking millionaire. Just like, I've been voicing Elmo for 40 fucking years now,
dude,
or whatever.
He's probably like 100 millionaire.
He's probably living it up.
The Tickle Me Elmo phase it was like Cabbage Patch Dolls, but way crazier.
How much do you think he got off of that though?
Like a lot of money.
Probably didn't get that much off of the Tickle Me Elmo stuff. I doubt it.
I'm gonna look at the net worth of the Tickle Me Elmo guy while you guys
I mean, I'm not saying that he's not a bajillionaire. I'm just saying that the doll, he probably just recorded the voices and they didn't have to pay him for anything but the recording session. They're not paying him like the back pay of however many dolls we sell. You get 2 cents per doll or whatever. Though that would have been a good deal to strike.
Kevin Jeffrey Clash is his name. Go on.
Anyway, they go through this really intricate dance. It's really interesting and cool. It's not great in the movie because of the optics of it all, like the optical.
His net worth is only 12 million. Holy shit. That is extremely surprising to me.
Probably ask for more.
I mean, that's a nice number in my mind.
He also does tons of other puppets. He's not just doing Elmo.
Yeah, but if you were the voice of Elmo, one of the most successful toys in the history of toys,
is that like Jim Henson died, and they were able to replace all of the voices that he did within like a couple of years. That's true. I think that they probably think that way, where they're like, listen, you know how many fucking people know how to do Elmo? Have you been on TikTok? Everybody knows how to do an Elmo.
Elmo loves you.
I assume it's a guy with a big cigar, and he's also a Muppet. Wow, what are you serious?
He's grown Get out of my office. He's grown up Peter Pan, just like in Chip and Dale.
Yeah. I was picturing like a very like bright blue, like navy blue Muppet with a red nose, smoking a big cigar, and he has a fake comb over, but it's all like weird yarn strands. He's like, get the hell out of my office.
Get out of my office. We need more voices.
What was, you said his last name was Clash?
Clash.
Yeah, get out of my office, Clash, and don't come back.
Don't come back till you're doing 65 voices a year.
Yeah.
I don't need your one Elmo voice. I got 100 people on TikTok. They're doing the voice. They love it.
But he also, again, this launched him into like this whole trajectory of becoming a Muppet guy, and he has been a Muppet guy for a very long time. There's also been some weird controversy with him over the years, and I don't really want to go into that because it's kind of disturbing to talk about.
It's a little bit weird, yeah.
But also, it seems like it's been completely brushed over. and resolved, and maybe
I
not
was gonna
as
bring.
true.
I wasn't gonna bring it up, but I thought that he had some stuff, but then I was like, was that the Barney guy who?
No, the
similar?
Elmo guy had some stuff, but it seemed like it was technically not illegal.
Oh no! Technically
But it
not
was-
illegal is almost worse.
Yeah.
Um,
Like, well, he started dating somebody and they were like in their early 20s, but he had known them when they were like 15 or something. like
Okay.
that. And it's like a
So-
weird thing where they were like, is he grooming? And they're
So
like, "No,
grooming
he-"
is real bad.
Yeah.
But what I want to say about this particular scene is it must have been horrifying as a kid to see a puppet poke its eyes out and then another
And they go
puppet
like
eat
this.
the eyes and then the eyes come out of the eyes because that reminds me of horror.
That reminds
and
me of Beetlejuice.
Psychedelic, yeah,
The movie
psychedelic
Beetlejuice.
horror. I also like that at one point a few of them turn into like an ostrich chasing one that's like a dog. There's just scenes where you see them in the background and their heads are like going off their body. It reminded me of like a scene from Fantasia, like a really psychedelic Fantasia moment.
Yeah, no, it's really cool. And if like, I think out of most of the puppetry scenes within the movie, this and like the battle sequence at the end are like the two that are the most successful in terms of like the scope of what they're trying to do and what they accomplished. Though I knock this one down a few marks just based on the fact that they had to do it in like an optical stage where it's like, we will figure this out later. And like even whatever, Sarah is like on the stage and like she's also not really there, and it's like they could have maybe figured this out a little bit better, but who knows? I don't know. We'd have to go back and really watch the making of, but
Kalen was hitting bongs, wasn't he?
It's interesting to watch when you see it without any of the optics there, and it's just like the people puppeteering. It's really cool. So let's move on. They escaped
FYI,
that scenario. Yeah,
FYI, it's now 11.
I am aware of the time.
Okay.
This is when she kisses him for rescuing. They slip down a little slide and they get stinked over into the bog of eternal stench or whatever. And he says, "You shouldn't have kissed me," because the Goblin King was threatening to turn him into the Prince of Eternal Stink or whatever.
Obviously, buttholes is what I wrote, and then I noticed that I was watching with the subtitles on, and the subtitle in capital letters came up that says "Bog making farting noises."
Yeah.
But you read it, but you're like, but making farting noises.
But that did the whole idea.
But it turns out you had speak to text on your phone and you were just actually farting, and you're like, oh gosh.
The whole concept of everybody being afraid to be sent to basically hell, but it's just a really stinky bog. I don't know if you've ever been to like a swamp or a bog. They just stink. They just smell like.
Oh, I have. I don't know if I've
butt.
ever brought this up on this podcast before, but I was a camp counselor for several years. And there was a few bogs that we would have to walk through.
And they
once in a while.
they just smell
Probably
like.
smelled like life.
They smell even worse if you break the surface of them and you like hit this sludge beneath. It comes up and you're just like, ah.
It's like a sludge. It's kind of like sludge, but it's also like sulfury. It's where new life is being created. You're right, Kaylin.
Life stinks. Stinky life.
Life stinks, and then you die and become stinky again.
All right, Jason, you continue the story. I have to go pee really quickly.
Okay, then they fall down a thing onto Ludo, and the gang is all back together. The bog
That
stench-
seemed weird to me. Like Ludo just showed up out of nowhere.
Well, he felt like he like fell down a hole earlier or something, and he probably fell down to the same place. That's how I interpreted that. And then that's when I wrote the bog of stench probably just smells like a regular bog. And then I wrote a weird fox guy confronts them and starts whapping them up with a cane. And Ludo straight fights him. And so at they kind of have a battle. Hogwarts. Hoggle just runs past him. He's like, fuck this, and runs past him over the bridge. And then Ludo like battles him while Sarah stands back. And basically Ludo chases him into a tree and bests him. And Didymus is like, you win, buddy, but I still can't let you pass. And that's when Sarah says, could you give us permission to pass? Could you give us permission to pass? And he was like, okay. But then this is something that I figured out. He didn't know why he was protecting, like he was protecting people from crossing the bridge because it was weak. He didn't know what he was doing because this is a mystical realm. He's probably just like put there by some sort of Goblin King.
Yeah.
And he was just put there to do a task. And he didn't know what he was doing. He just knew that he couldn't let people pass. But the reason is because she walks over it and it immediately breaks. And then luckily Ludo, summons a rock that rolls down into the water. She lands on it. And then he summons more that come up from underneath.
All the while.
Yeah.
And I really like that when they walk across the rocks, it like farts with their footsteps, which is very funny to me. And then when the dog runs across it, it's like it gets super fast fart noises.
And that's when Didymus joins the party. Didymus and Ambrosius join the party.
I think this is like
which is her dog, right?
Yes, it's her dog. Yeah.
Is it?
Was her dog named Ambrosius in the real world?
No, her dog was named something else.
I didn't even pick up on a dog in the real world. Oh,
yeah, she
dog
has
at the very beginning.
Yeah, and he gets all wet, and he
did
have a name.
In the garage.
It was something fantasy based, but it was definitely not Ambrosius. It was like something like fucking, I don't know, like Gandalf or some shit.
Bogtron.
She says like, what about Samsonite?
All right.
Or something.
Talk about the next scene is the first kind of creepy moment.
Is that the junkyard?
No. It's the masquerade.
Oh, right.
Oh,
the masquerade. This is the weirdest part because it's like
it's
a weird
not,
eyes wide shut.
It's still the creepy part.
Still not the creepy part, in my opinion.
Well, I know what you're gonna say is the creepy part, but I have like a weird diffusing thing to that, I think. But maybe I should just not, because it's like, ugh, it's gonna make me seem weird. Well, it's like the whole thing is in her imagination, right? Like that's what this story is, right? Like that's why I think you can logically get around it, but like at the same time you don't need to, because it's adults making a story about a child.
That's true. Like in a coming of age tale, don't take this the wrong way, but in a coming of age tale, it does make sense that a young girl who's having a sexual awakening is sort of fantasizing about her ideal suitor.
And you don't even really need to call it a sexual awakening, more as like a vision of what they want to come to them soon. Like you don't have to like add sexuality to it, because this movie doesn't really have a ton of sexuality other than David Bowie
except for the tennis ball dick that the man has in his fucking tights.
Which I always forget about until I watch it. I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot his dick is just massive. Like he's like a ballerina man or whatever.
That's what happens when you wear tight pants.
It's true.
It's definitely what happens when I wear tight pants.
It's definitely what happens. It's a problem. It's a problem.
No. So the masquerade happens right after this? Are you sure it's right after this?
So what she eats the peach. So they're all hungry. They get through this bit.
Right.
They're talking about being hungry. Gugamel says, here's a peach. She eats the peach. She's like, thank you, Gugatron.
Gilgamesh.
Thank you, Goggles. And he's like, my name's Hogan.
It's Googles. Whatever. I keep telling you.
And she immediately, without question, because she trusts her friend, bites into this peach. See that the peach, it should have been an apple. The peach is a little bit too gross to me.
I don't know if people were calling it a peach back then, but maybe.
Well, it could have been.
God, this movie is so sexual. God damn it.
Anyway, she bites into the peach. She starts immediately tripping balls, but she has like a fantasy adventure through a masquerade. And the masquerade is just basically David Bowie shows up in a sex mask and they dance together. And she's all done up like a woman. Like she looks like one of those.
Yeah.
Victorian era or whatever it is.
No, but she looks, you know, when you see like Honey Boo Boo,
like a Victorian secret magazine.
What's it called? A glamour, not glamour, but what's it called when they make little girls do the
talent or pageant.
She looks all like pageant makeup, and like her hair's blown out, like a child pageant, and it's so weird. It's so uncomfortable. And he's like, "Come into my arms," and sings like a nice song to her.
I'm in love with you. Are you in love with me?
Yeah,
I'm in love with you. And you're like, ugh.
And that goes on for 5 minutes.
It goes on for way too long, and like everything becomes way more.
But this is the thing I like about it. And I don't think that the writers of this movie intended the whole back and forth. I think she was coming of age and like learning not to like just get seduced by gross older men. Because she's like, wait a second, this is fucking gross. And she picks up a chair and smashes the fantasy. Like she smashes the fourth wall.
This isn't what I wanted. Yeah. Well, because this is probably what she imagined at some point, right? And then it became too weird. And so like, this is what I was trying to say earlier is like everything in the world is super cartoony. It's very childish, except for David Bowie. And then in this scene, every single person is
just people,
a real person. Yeah. And so like when I was watching it, I was like, okay, so she is living through childhood still, right? Like the puppets are representing her childhood, and David Bowie is almost like a trajectory of adulthood. And then in this scene, it's like, oh, now I'm all of a sudden catapulted into what I imagine to be a adult situation. And it's scary. Everyone is wearing scary masks. None of the masks are beautiful or nice. They're all kind of rigid and lumpy and gross.
Well,
and
what I was going to
like
say,
skeletons and shit, right?
What I was going to say is it's a good point that up until this point, the only humans in this movie are Sarah and the Goblin King, because this is real life, but she's experiencing the same fantasy she's been a part of this whole time with all these weird creatures. But she's seeing them now as all adults wearing creepy masks. So it's still same
a lot of the masks look like almost like renditions of the
goblins or weird puppets. Yeah. So it is interesting that you brought that up, because I didn't realize that was sort of the metaphor that was happening. But that's
the beautiful thing about metaphors in movies is they're not always clear, and sometimes you just gotta talk it out with your buddies.
Hey Kaylin, what's a metaphor?
It's when you say something
fucking
that is like another thing.
So yeah, it's sort of.
Well, yes, that's true, but like, let me
it's
try
like the
this
representation of an idea without actually explaining the idea.
Hey, Steve, what's a metaphor?
It's like the
fucking. Did I fail the bit?
Oh my god! Well, you both failed the bit. I think Steve did a bit back to me.
I did, but what is your bit? Is it a bit? I don't know.
Kaylin, just say what? Just say what? Hey, Kaylin.
Oh, okay.
Hey, Kaylin, what's a metaphor?
Hoodoo.
Fucking. Damn it.
All right, I understand the bit now. Hey, what's a metaphor?
Fucking. I mean, what?
What?
I mean, it still works if I ask you. Okay. So
that's a joke I wrote. That's a Jason original. Just like, why can't I move my hand? Here we go.
But what's a meta then? Like, what?
Jason, is this a Jason original? Me and my girlfriend were 96 saying we got nothing accomplished. Is that one of yours?
I used to say 96ing all the time, but I that might be a.
It's just like rubbing your butt on the back of someone's head.
Yeah, it's butt to butt.
It's not butt to butt. It's like butt to the back of the other person's head.
Butt to head. Yeah.
I'm flossing my wife's butt with my hair, and we got nowhere with that.
To go back to our stand-up comedian thing, like I'm good. Like I can make a couple friends laugh in this context, because I can rip off jokes and I can make, like, you just do non sequiturs. It's when I get on stage that I have to like relate to an audience. The closest I was ever able to do it was to be be an announcer, and even then it was hard to connect with the audience. I'd make a joke and everybody would be like, "We want
They
to
were
see
probably
wrestling."
I did a speech at a wedding last year, and I fucking rocked the house. It was great. My opening line roared. It was like a
I wish
wave
I was
of
there.
laughter. I was like, "Yes, give me strength for the rest of the speech." Anyway, so we should continue on because we're getting real late into this. We're not even near
Luckily,
the-
we only have a couple scenes left.
That's true. Let's go right to the end of the gross masquerade scene, which I think we all have now understood as the moment where she realizes that adulthood is actually quite scary and she shouldn't be rushing into it.
Yep.
Which I did want to mention this earlier. The reason that they cast her as she was literally 14 when this movie was made, and he cast her because he wanted somebody who was right in that in-between moment of like being a child and being a teenager without it being sort of like infected by either, or like one was more strong than the other, and it was like meant to show a very strong contrast. And I think the scene is like sort of that. It's like that is the big one where it's like, here look, all the childish shit is gone, and it's all the adult stuff that you want and the adult stuff that you imagine to be romanticized, which is like costumes and people dancing, and it's just scary to you now. Which adulthood is scary, you know. At that time, adulthood was maybe exciting for some people but scary for others, and I think it's a very good metaphor.
Fucking.
And and I think that she then woke up with a half-eaten peach in her hand, and she was like, "What the fuck?" And
It
this
was
is my
dosed with
next
LSD from her
moment.
English teacher, who was David Bowie. And nope.
This is the next best scene in the movie to me is when all these weird junk people are like, yeah. Like,
literally, they were called. I wrote Trash Lady, and they were literally in the subtitles called Junk Lady. So,
so I was right, and you were wrong.
I was right.
I wrote Hoarding Lady.
I said junk people, but you know, because like one of them looks like an old man who's like,
Hoarding Lady is a good one too.
Yeah, but I had forgotten about this scene, and I was like, oh, I really like the look of this junk lady who has like all this shit on her. And when she's like, well, why don't you come inside and just, you know, relax inside of here for a bit? And I was like, oh my God.
She reminds
me
of
is
the
laughing
Crones.
way too hard, and I would be terrified of her.
She reminds me of the crones from like The Witcher. Like they remind me of like old school witches. But
Yeah,
with another layer of like they are also live in a trash
well, you know,
mountain.
you also see stuff like The Never-Ending Story where you have characters like this, but they are good. You know, like they're like a good version of this. But the fact that she has a giant mountain of garbage on her back, immediately you're like, this lady's not right. Something's wrong here.
We have a lot of those in Toronto, actually.
Yeah, a lot of junk ladies just. Excuse me.
It's a different kind of junk.
Can you buy me a coffee? And you're like, no. No.
Can I get a Game Boy coffee?
But she leads her into her own bedroom, and we then get that slow pan shot of her entire room, and you start to see everything, and some of the stuff you haven't even seen yet that is to come, but you see a lot of the stuff in the room that you're realizing, oh, a lot of this is built up from her own imagination.
Yeah.
And I had forgotten about this, and you know, she fake falls asleep. She gets up and she thinks it's a dream. She opens the door and the trash woman is there again. She's like, yeah, let's go back inside. You need to sit down at your vanity and look at all this cool shit you got. And she starts to like
tempting her with possessions.
Well, she's piling it on her back. Like she's literally piling it on her. And I actually got a bit anxious while watching it because I was like, holy fuck, they're gonna turn her into one of them, and she's gonna turn into a gross puppet person, being like, ugh.
It made me question the things that I buy. It made me like reflect on
you just
myself.
have like CDs and like Dragon Ball Z figures like on your back, like, oh shit.
Honestly, like it's kind of a fight between me and my wife where I want to turn my living room into an action figure toy store, and she's like, I don't want my house to look like a toy store, but if I had a room that was my room, it would have the biggest TV I could afford in the middle, like mounted to the wall, and then every space, every inch around the TV, all the walls would have action figures and posters, and just like I would regress,
Your man cave.
but I would regress into like the things I couldn't have when I was 12. Like that's where my brain would go, because when I was 12 I was very poor, and I could buy like one action figure every couple months, every 6 months, save up all my chore money.
Right.
And I might be able to get a couple action figures a year, or maybe one video game a year as well. And the video game thing is fine because video games are basically free in 2022. Unless you want to buy a brand new one. If you want 500 video games, you just pay a couple $10 a month or whatever service.
Are we we're all describing what our junk pile would be right now on our back?
Yeah, my junk pile would be specifically wrestling action figures, because they make so fucking many of them.
Like where they're like the legs are like they're
the rubber ones.
You walk and they're like rubbery and they're moving while you walk. Oh, God.
You can like stretch them back and then they go.
You know the ones where you could hit them together and they're just like rubbery toys?
Yeah, LJN figures. Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
They're like 12 inches or 10 inches or something.
They're 12 inches. I mean the Mattel WWE 6-inch guys.
How many inches did you get inside of you?
5. Just the feet were poking out. Just the boots were poking
just
out.
The tip.
And they're like kicking.
Just the people's elbow.
Let me out. That's how you make them become real. It's like my theory from a couple weeks ago.
It's like the Indian in the cupboard, but it's your
man. I watched that the other day. When I was a kid, I wanted that so bad.
I saw that shit in theaters with my dad and read the book around the same time. And Indian in the Cupboard was dope as fuck.
I watched that movie recently, and I literally messaged my mom and I apologized to her for making her watch it as a kid. I was like, I'm so sorry I made you watch this movie as a kid. And she's like, why? And I was like, because it's actually the worst movie I've ever seen in my entire life.
I bet it sucks. Like I bet it
sucks so bad.
Like I bet it's not even like a good. It's a shitty kids movie. It wouldn't work for this show. This month, much like there was a lot more to talk about, but a lot like my Trey Parker and Matt Stone birthday month, we're learning things about how we perceive film now when we have to be analytical.
Yeah, we need to. If we're going to do these types of themes, we need to do something like the John Carpenter or like the Stephen King, where there'll be more
weird movies that you can actually say like, hey, did you see this one? And I think that Labyrinth is one of those, and I think Dark Crystal is. June Henson was a good idea. There was lots to talk about, but they weren't enjoyable movies to watch. No. And I'm gonna reveal. Well, Hitchhiker is a modern movie though. It's not that old. I'm gonna reveal something during my final thoughts that's gonna make you guys hate me. But anyway, let's take it home.
It's like I didn't actually watch it.
Oh, I did. I did. I've been laying clues throughout the podcast.
How about that Penrose stairway in real life?
You talking about the Escher painting?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, we can just skip ahead a bit, guys.
I just wanted the one thing I wanted to mention before we skip is the boss battle with the giant iron creature that's like a mechanized robot.
We're more or less there anyway.
We are there, and I really fucking loved that scene. That's another Final Fantasy paying homage thing where like the goblins in the Final Fantasy universe and in like the Twilight Zone, like goblins as lore, they're tinkerers, right? So the fact
You're thinking of gremlins.
Yeah, but also goblins do that in the Final Fantasy universe because there's no gremlins.
You said Twilight.
Did I say Twilight?
The Twilight Zone.
Yeah, in the Twilight Zone movie,
a gremlin takes apart a plane.
What I'm referring to. Stop doing my bit back to me. My point is I really like the fact that these goblins had this mechanized robot that sucks. Basically, it was very easily tricked. This is when I realized that Gorgothal was a Hargonoth or whatever his name is was the DPS, because he's like, I got this, runs up to the top of the building and like fucking takes over, and then makes it like it doesn't hit itself, but he malfunctions it and then it just explodes. Anyway, I just want to talk about that scene right quick. But yeah, MC Escher, the final boss battle with the Goblin King.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to talk endlessly about the huge goblin battle in the Goblin City because it's so great. But I mean, all we can
With the
really say
rocks.
about it is the puppetry is amazing.
Yeah.
And
There's giant hordes of goblins. Is this the scene
Oh,
with
what's the with what's his name, Didymus and Ambrosia, when they're surrounded, is like, I think we got them surrounded.
yeah, and then they're all pointing spears at him.
Yeah,
He's like,
yeah. That, I had a good out loud laugh at that.
Yeah, there's another moment later where he's like, open the door, Ambrosius, and like the like I'm like laughing because the dog somehow locked the door. Like, you don't really get an explanation to that. And then he turns around and he's like, oh, had enough, have you? Wish to give yourselves up? And he's like pointing at all of them, and they all have their spears at him. Yeah, I love that character. He's such a good character.
But also, I saw a lot of hilarious techniques, film techniques used in this scene where Ludo gets to the top of a building and starts summoning the rocks to come help.
Yeah.
And then suddenly they're moving wherever he wants them to go. But the effect they used for that was them just going backwards. Like they just rewound the tape for a lot of it. Did you notice that?
Well, yeah, but they also did stuff where they clearly sort of like filmed the rocks going backwards, but filmed the other people going forward. So it looked like they were chasing them. So like it was pretty effective for me. Like there was one point where I was like, how the fuck did they get these rocks to follow these people?
Yeah.
And I like realized I'm like, oh no, I'm stupid.
I also made a note that the goblins are mostly incompetent through most of this, and they're just destroying their own town, sending pot shots.
There is one point where the rocks are like attacking everybody, and then you hear one of the goblins very like they're all yelling shit constantly. But if you listen, some of them are saying some very funny shit. Like there's one point where you see a bunch of goblins getting run over, and then one goblin goes into a house and he says, I've had enough of this. I'm going to bed. The guy just like runs inside and closes the door. And I picture him going and putting a blanket over top. Like, I'm done. Funny.
I'm done with this now. I'm going to bed. Speaking of which, let's take this home.
Yes. So we get to the Escher painting, which is the moment where they go to Bowie and they say, she's here, she's with her friends, and they're in the castle, and he's like, ding ding, get them out of here, and he grabs the baby and he goes into another dimension, and then she finds herself there as well. And this moment is quite cool. It's kind of like an old hat kind of thing though now, to watch it now, where you're like, yeah, I watched Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness and the first Doctor Strange where
my mind,
like they did shit that was insane, where it's like, this is like, you know,
Inception is another movie that has some crazy like
imagine they
illusions.
made this moment with that kind of like crazy visual stuff, right? Like
all I could think of was like they should remake Labyrinth with some other like modern, like make it with Lady Gaga as a Goblin
I was
King.
about to say that too, Lady Gaga.
Wouldn't that be fucking cool?
That would be fucking dope.
As the Goblin Queen?
No, it's still
or
the
king.
Goblin Binary.
Make her the king. Yeah,
the Goblin Binary.
She's like, I am the Goblin King. It would be great if she was playing the Goblin King still. Yeah, she's clearly not a man.
I agree.
That'd be dope.
Actually, yeah.
Or get somebody who's like super ambiguous. If what's his name wasn't so fucked up.
Hey, didn't he get fired? That Ezra guy.
That's
well, they made the whole. They filmed the whole movie, and Ezra Miller is non-binary, but like is the nightmare human, and they can't fire them from a movie that's completely done and made and going to come out. Are they going to cancel the movie?
Yeah,
no.
It was like when Kevin Spacey got super canceled, and then Ridley Scott was like, well, I guess we'll just remove him from the movie completely. They just like CG'd him out and put Christopher Plummer in the entire
same with Chris D'Elia and the Dawn of the Dead or Day of the Dead, whatever the remake, the Zack Snyder
Welcome
remake.
to Zack Snyder's Zombie Vegas or whatever the movie.
But that's
Chris D'Elia was in that.
Chris D'Elia was originally it was Tig Notaro's character. And Tig Notaro was just filmed and added later. Like they just filmed all of her scenes and they just put them in place of his scenes. And she filmed completely
on green
separately.
screen, yeah, and they just
And
added
that
her in.
and you can see it's very, very weird. It's very awkward.
It's so like I didn't even know that until after, and I talked to you, Jason, and you were like, "Was the Chris D'Elia Tig Notaro thing weird?" And then I didn't even know who these people were, and I was like, "Are those wrestlers?" I think that's what I said to you. I'm like, "Are those wrestlers?" And you're like, "No." And then I looked it up, and I was like, "Oh, I didn't even know that happened." But after watching it, I was like, "That makes so much more sense," because Tig Notaro always seems completely disconnected from
herself.
everybody
Yeah,
other. Like
Gotcha.
she'll be saying things and people will be like looking at her, and then she'll just be like and it like seems like she's like totally like separate from everybody else. Like, yeah, watch that movie knowing that, and it just kind of ruins it for you, but watch it afterwards and it makes the movie actually like a super hilarious comedy, like
Nice.
just like a, you know, those like the MTV Music Awards or like the Oscars and stuff where they like
Where they
add
spoof.
somebody into like a scene.
Yeah.
Well, like me
that's
and
kinda
you,
what it seems like, yeah.
talking to each other in the same room right now. We're clearly talking to each other in the same room right now. You know, it's the same kind of thing.
I'm in a labyrinth.
I'm in an
totally in
oubliette.
this labyrinth.
Oubliette. Or
We're in
whatever it's
the
called.
An
We're in the same
oubliette,
room.
yeah.
Hey, Kaylin.
When he said oubliette, I was like, what the fuck is an oubliette? And then 2 seconds later, Hoggle is like, you don't even know what an oubliette is.
Yeah.
I
It's like
don't,
an
tell
Ori.
me.
It's like an Ori. Remember when you guys taught me about Oris last week? And I had it written down even?
Yeah, but I knew what an Ori was. I don't know what an oubliette is.
I've heard oubliette through Final Fantasy, which this movie ripped
Oh,
off.
It's just like
Final
a dungeon
Fantasy.
room or something. I mean, they still didn't really explain it in this movie. He
So-
said it's a place where you send people that you don't want to come back again.
So
like,
I find I have a weird line in my notes where I go, is he in love with her? Does he want the baby or what? The motive for the Goblin King is unclear. Not as pervy as I remember besides the dance scene. And then the next line is, shows up in the bulgiest bulge suit and says, let me rule you and I'll give you whatever you want. Fear me, love me, do as I say. And I said, I wrote this down to myself. She's like 15, bro. And then I learned that she's 14.
he also
Love
goes
me,
on to say
rule
that
me,
I have.
fear me, love me, do as I say, after saying, let me rule
Well, it's
you.
clear that you stop paying attention after that point because it goes on. And he says, I have no power over you. Just give me what I want and I'll be your slave. And he is like, I will bow to you because you are what is the most important.
So she wins basically just saying he can't rule or control her. And that's the whole movie is just say what you want.
But that's where she realizes, because he's like, okay, I have to like let you know that like I actually have no power over you at all. You are the one with power here, and if you just let me do what I want to do, I will be your slave forever because I control this whole world, but I can't control you. And then that's when she realizes that, oh, I'm in control here, and she decides to destroy everything. So like, yes, it is gross and creepy up until the moment that he then says, but I guess you're not buying this, so I'm gonna let you know. I'm gonna let you in on the secret. I actually have no power over you whatsoever. You have all the power here.
And
But
he
I will
was
be your slave.
he was the owl the whole time.
Yes, from the moment that he transformed from an owl into the Goblin King, he was. So do we want to talk about this end scene in more detail, or I think that we're good? Kaylin, do you have any thoughts on it, or?
The end scene? No, I think you summed it up very nicely there.
I did take it in a gross way. The back and forth was him like on his hands and knees, like, please, I thought I wanted the baby to be my son, but really I want you to take my hand and let me be your king, and you can have whatever you want as my queen, but also
I
kind of
thought as deceit. Like he was saying, like, I'll be your slave, but he's not really being her slave. It's like, you're being my slave and I'll pretend to be your slave is kind of how
that's how I interpreted it as well. I thought it was the worst thing the movie did in their like relationship was this moment where he just lays it all on the table and she's like, dude, I gotta go to high school tomorrow.
Yeah. I'm still in middle school. I only graduated a couple of months ago.
Yeah, you're 48.
But I think the best part of that moment is when she like realizes that like, oh, you are what I'm scared of, I thought you were what I want, but you're actually what I don't want at all yet, because I'm not done. I'm not done with being a kid. Like, that's the point of this whole movie, I think, is that like it's her essentially dealing with her
Puberty.
idea of being a kid. I don't want to say puberty, Kaylin. We don't need to use puberty.
What's wrong with the word puberty?
Because it elicits hair growth and shit. That's why.
I don't know. I kind of agree with Kaylin though. This
Fine,
is sort of like a
puberty.
coming of age. I guess coming of age is a better way to put it, but puberty is the most nitty gritty way to put that these kind of coming of age movies. And coming of age more implies like 16.
Well, coming of age means you are becoming an adult, and this is not her
Yeah.
becoming an adult. This is her
No.
becoming like a teenager, like going from being a child to being a teenager. That's what this story is about. And I think that, like, in terms of storytelling, like, that is far more interesting to me in a lot of ways when it comes to like being able to pair puppets with the real world than a teenager becoming a 20-something-year-old and they deal with their friends being alcoholics and getting into crime or whatever.
Oh man,
like
how
this.
funny would that movie be?
But to go back to what I was saying at the beginning, like she does drop the accent for the most part by the end of the movie. I think that was tied to her, like the early part of her arc
and stuff. Yeah. Like
by the end of it, she's kind of like realized this kind of plays into maybe not the whole story happening in like a one thought moment, but like maybe during an evening of her trying to babysit this kid, she goes through all this shit and starts to have realizations about what she wants, maybe in a partner at some point in her life. Maybe like she starts to
honestly, I think you guys are thinking a little bit too much about this. I think it is much more simple than that, because at the end of the movie, she goes back to her fucking room and
then parties.
The baby is
and
there,
has a fucking
and she
rager.
looks into the mirror and she and like all of the shit from her childhood that she's been working through this entire movie confronts her in the mirror and says, if you need me, I'm still going to be here for you. Your childhood is not dead. We are here if you need us.
Yeah.
If you need to become a kid again, just remember that we're still here inside of you. And like, that's what the whole movie is about, right?
That's
it's like,
true. I agree with you.
I think it's way less creepy than a lot of people like to like be like, David Bowie's dick though. Did you see it? Like, yeah, I know, but like that's what she's being
That's because
tempted
there's something
by.
wrong with us. That's just there's something wrong with people in general.
Yeah. But at the end of the movie, like all those fucking great puppets are back. Even the ones that were scary to her are like, don't worry, we're your friends too. And you're like,
That's something I
they
didn't
have
notice
a literal
during-
party.
Yeah, they're every freaky monster, even those like weird fire monsters are there too. Like everybody's there. And then everybody went to bed.
Oh God.
Is that a segue? Are you trying to segue, Jason?
I'm not the host, but the host still has to do his final thoughts. So
All right. I think we've had a good discussion. We'll do our final thoughts now. I guess I'll start because I started before.
Yep.
Okay. This movie is good. And I would show this movie to my kids at an appropriate age. Actually, maybe I would show it to them at a younger age and before they know what a David Bowie bulge is. And then like later I'd be like, did that fuck you up? Like as an experiment.
I bet they wouldn't even notice.
No, they probably wouldn't. But I think that like the movie in terms of storytelling is very hollow in the same way that The Dark Crystal was. But I think that it has good scene structure throughout. Every single scene feels like a miniature story within itself. They do thread together and the narrative is there, but everything feels very isolated and contained and good. And like I said before, every time you feel like you're moving on from one scene to the next, you do get bored of what's happening in that scene, and then hopefully something more intriguing happens in the next. And there are like a couple of standout moments within the movie that I find very charming and intriguing and well puppeteered and well directed, and the music is good. When it comes to what the movie's about, I think I kind of like wrapped it up in that final moment where it is about a little girl who is becoming a teenager and she's feeling the pressure of her parents and society to, you know, grow up, but she doesn't want to, and she can't leave things behind. Lancelot, for example, she literally gets upset that her Lancelot stuffed bear is in the other room, and she goes and gets it and curses her brother about it. And that leads her into this quest. And Jason, I do, as much as I kind of like riffed on you about it, I do like the idea that this is like an imagining of what she would do to her brother within like a short period of time. Like she could be just stewing in her bed the whole time, imagining this, being like, that fucking bitch, and then being like, but then what if he did get taken? Oh, I'd have to go save him. Like she's just imagining it. But I, you know, like I said throughout, everything that she's confronting is childish, and the only thing that is truly scary to her is David Bowie, who is a real person, and he is frightening. And the contrast between her being literally 14 when she was filming this and a grown man is disturbing to look at. And I think that that would still be disturbing to anyone. Like even a little kid would be like, why is this old man like being romantic with her? And like maybe that's the point, right? And the ballroom scene where she's confronted with a bunch of adult people having a weird party in a room full of pillows, kind of fucked up. But again, by the end of the movie, she basically reveals that she is in control of everything and she knows what's going on and she can move on from it, but she doesn't necessarily want to move on to that world that she's imagined. She knows that she has to move on, but she can still hang on to the past, which I think is always important, right? Like all of us hang on to the past, like in every way. Kaylin, you still like Dragon Ball Z. Jason,
I like
you
call
still
it
like
my
wrestling.
childlike charm.
I still like Star Wars. Like those are all things that mean a lot to us and are a huge part of our childhood, and we bring that forward with us because sometimes being an adult sucks and it's really scary. But you can reach back into the past and pull it close to your heart and be like, I still have you, Obi-Wan. You're still my favorite Jedi. And like you can do that with anything that you need to do it with. And I think that's kind of the point of this movie, is making the transition from a child to a teenager where you are meant to start to grow up feel a little bit easier, and let you know that like, yes, it's okay to look into the future, but it's always important to look backwards as well. And I think if it came down to a rating for this movie, I would give this a long journeyed labyrinth path to the middle where I found something very special, but I won't tell anybody what that special thing is because I think it means something different to me than it might mean to you. That's my rating. Jason, you're next.
3.5 out of 5. Good puppets. Kaylin. No, it's a great film. Like you said,
that's so rude.
You said everything about the past, the present, and the future. I do think that at the end of the day, the David Bowie stuff, I hate to use this phrase, but it was a different time. And now we look back on old movies and we see the grossness of the writing style sometimes. I do like to think of Blank Check, the weirdness. Like that's a Disney movie and it has that weird quality to it. You know,
what do you mean? Because he had a crush on the.
Doesn't he like make out with a full-grown woman?
No. Neither of those.
He doesn't
things.
make out with her. He just has a crush on her. I had a crush on older women.
I know, fair enough, but she kisses him and it's like, "Call me when you're older," and that's weird.
That gave me hope.
Yeah, but like you're an adult who has sex with adult women. You know what I mean? So this,
like, I watched it last week. It gave me hope.
This elicits a weird, like it's a weird feeling of this. The best way I could try to downplay it is
I do think that it also has to do
maybe David Bowie's character is like her in like fantasy of another 14-year-old. So she just imagines this 14-year-old who happens to be a fully grown David Bowie.
I believe her mom left.
That's why David Bowie is so sprightly and so like, you know. Anyway, I don't want to sit in the details too much. We already talked about everything we could possibly talk about. for this film. I do still give it a 3.5 out of 5. Good puppets. The puppetry in this movie is unparalleled to anything we did this month. And also it was genuinely interesting from scene to scene. And the big reveal that I would like to reveal to you guys is that
this is what I was waiting for.
I watched it at 1.5 times speed for most of it on YouTube.
On
That's
YouTube?
That's
No,
inappropriate.
I bought it. I
God.
bought it on YouTube, but YouTube has
Oh,
a feature where you can
okay.
do it at one point. It was still in 1080p, and I still got all the information that I needed out of the movie. I just got through it.
But you don't
in-
get the same cadence.
You absolutely do. I got through it in 70 minutes. So that made me very happy as a film reviewer. And I would recommend that to anybody. That's my biggest recommendation. Watch Labyrinth in 1.5x and
I don't recommend that.
you'll see it in a whole, well, I'm recommending it, you see. You'll see it in a whole new light. The music sped up a little bit is it makes it a little bit more poppy.
The views and opinions shared by our co-hosts do not reflect.
They
the
do
views
because
and opinions.
I'm the co-host and the
I don't know, man. I think that like a lot of your opinion there was about David Bowie being too sexual and too old, which I think is fair. But I think that that's also like a different. We're in a
I
different.
said good
climate.
puppets.
I know, but like a lot of it had to do with David Bowie being there.
No,
and old.
I
And
would
it's
have
like
said
that's
what
true.
you
That
were
is
saying.
very true.
I
but
would have
also
said
like
what
it's
you were
not,
saying about seeing the future, holding on to your past. But you said that. I said the other part that I was thinking about a lot, and that's we
Like,
dwell.
all I could think about was David Bowie's
is
golf
huge
balls and
package.
tennis balls.
Exactly.
That's
Kaylin.
true, though. It is inappropriate. Why was it there?
The
I don't
canister
know
that
who
holds
thought it was
the
a good
tennis
idea
balls.
to actually make him wear an actual cup. Seemed like he was wearing an actual cup for sports, and that
No,
was
there are
probably
times
maybe
where
it
you
was for
literally see
protection.
the shape of his dick. Like there are a couple where he's like, "I refuse to wear that. I'm not wearing that. I'm wearing nothing at all. Nothing at all. Nothing at all."
Yeah, but what about the seams? Wouldn't that bother your penis? Hey, what game's on that Game Boy?
It's a mug.
Yeah, but does it like show a game when it's got hot cocoa?
I
I
gotta
would
go to
assume
bed.
Mario or
I
whatever.
gotta go to bed.
It's
I
your
actually
final
have to
thoughts,
go
Kellen.
to
Let's
bed.
go.
It's late.
It's Mario. I don't know.
We
what
did
it
3
is.
hours again.
No, we didn't.
We're
We're close.
Yeah, we're 15 minutes away from 3 hours.
So on that note, I will quickly wrap us, or well, so I guess Hoggle went missing during baggage claim or something, and some baggage claim person found it, and now he's in a museum. At the end, when she gets home, the clock strikes midnight or something, and she looks up. For a second, I thought the baby was going to be on top of the clock. Final thoughts. This is my first time seeing this movie. This movie isn't made for me now. So again, same with the previous. It didn't have nostalgia like points, but it was definitely a step up from Dark Crystal, in my opinion, where it did have a bit more story structure to it. It's hard to follow you guys up. Well, just in general, like, because both you guys kind of like, or Jason, like you said, like Steve touched on points, and then so you don't want to repeat that. You say your other thing. Steve, you're so eloquent with your
You calling me an
final
elephant? I resent that.
Never mind.
I resemble that like accusation.
With my giant David Bowie trunk.
I did find the puppets were very lifelike. Like their faces were, their eye lines, like you know what I mean. It was top notch. As Jason likes to say, chef's kiss or whatever. And again, I said this before. I think last episode, I like practical over CGI. Not that CGI was much of a thing back then, but part of me kind of wishes that they would kind of keep this format or technique, I guess, alive, which I guess is still used a little bit, but things are just more heavy CGI these days. But then on the flip side, you know, not wasting physical products causing more trash in the world. Like, where do these things go after a movie's done,
Go to
right?
museums.
Right, but it's still just, it's like, you know, it's all junk. Like in that scene, it's all junk or
And
whatever, right? Like it's
warehouses.
just
Like the warehouse
it's-
at the end of Raiders of the Lost Ark. That's where they go.
There's also some woman who loved this movie who bought fucking Hoggle the puppet, and it's in her house now somewhere.
no, Hoggle is in a baggage claim museum.
Cool.
According to the internet.
That's cool. That's kind of cool, actually. What do you? I didn't know what you meant by that, but now I do. I thought, oh, okay, cool.
But yeah, Steve, you made a good point about it being like sectional or whatever, where it's like it's little bits and pieces to kind of keep you entertained for that moment. You kind of start to kind of lose interest a little bit, but then it goes on to a new thing to kind of get you interested again. And there were things in every little scene that kind of like, where I was like, ooh, oh, that's kind of cool. Okay, what's going on here now or whatever. And all that being
Street
said,
format. 5 minutes of chop.
I give it a dope pirate shirt with a vest combo. That's what I give it.
Pretty good.
All right.
Pretty good.
All right. So
I'm Robert De Niro.
You're gonna meet the family. All right, we did Robert De Niro impressions.
Everybody did it. They did the face. Okay, so we've reached the end of June Henson. Everybody, thank you so much. Maybe not the greatest choice of movies, but you know, I did enjoy talking about this one a little bit more than last week's. And I guess I'm gonna have to go ahead and say for Jason and for Kalen, I am Steven.
And for Jason and for Kalen, I'm for Steven, and for Kalen, I'm Jason.
You did that on
Hoggle, and
purpose.
for Hoggle, I am Boggle.
For my lovely co-hosts, for my lovely lovelies. No, wait. For these guys, Steven and Jason, I'm myself, Kellen.
Hey. And hey.
And hey, did you see this one?
Hey, did you see this fucking movie or whatever? The new name of the podcast.
Did you see this one?
Hey, did you see this? We're rebranding it. It's called Hey, what the fuck you watching, bitch?
What do you want from us
Hey,
already?
fuck you.